Ladies and gentlemen, let's go. Let's go. We ain't got no time to waste. Let's go. You are now listening to Jason Anderson, and you are in the zone.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Martin will get it away. Talented Kyle Phillips back deep. Muffs it on the fair catch. And it's all gone Buffalo's way. Bills able to recover. Tyrell Dodson able to recover for Buffalo. Tennessee can't do anything right tonight.
You're in the zone on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Look, Tennessee was ready to play for a quarter. All right, they were there. They had answers for the Bills for a quarter of football. When that thing was 7-7, oh, you had the Bills worried. Yeah, the Bills worried. Oh, the Rams were easy. Titans had a letdown against the Giants. Not going to happen back-to-back weeks. They are here to fight. It's 7-7, 4th down and 1. You're not stopping Derrick Henry. He's the king. He's scoring touchdowns, and it's tied up. And I stopped watching, so I'm assuming it was a close game, right? They scored more than 7 points the rest of the way, right? They probably got at least another field goal or something. Like, they weren't stopping at 7. They were ready to keep rolling. That was the confidence boost they needed. It certainly did not result in a 34-0 run by the Bills after that.
Bills might be good. Bills seem like, I don't want to overreact, small sample size and all that. I'll take a drink. But the Buffalo Bills seem good at football.
I'm going to wait until they play a team that's done something in the last couple of years.
Sure, great point. No, that's a good point. A team that's been to a Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl, been to an AFC Championship game, something. Right. What have you done for me lately is really the question.
I mean, they beat the defending Super Bowl champions and the team that last year was the number 1 seed in the AFC. But how good are they this year?
That's right. That's
the real issue.
Beat this year's Super Bowl champions.
Right? Do that,
then
Buffalo.
We can talk.
I mean, I haven't seen them play this year's Super Bowl champion yet. I've yet to see that this year. So until that happens...
Unless it's the Titans.
Or the Rams.
Or, I'm sorry, unless it's the Rams. I went back...
Or the Titans.
It's early.
Could be the Titans.
I'm going to go back to drinking.
Could be the Titans, though. They could be...
Not... Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
They could be for them to be a Super Bowl champion this year would have to be one of two teams.
Mentally, I was penciling the Bills into the Super Bowl to play an NFC team.
Yeah, no,
that's actually what I was doing there.
No, they don't have to. You don't have to make the Super Bowl. You know,
no, that's true
because we don't know if they're good or not.
Maybe Malik Willis.
The whole point is we have no idea. No, they're really good.
Seem very good.
Bills are pretty good.
In all phases.
Yeah, offense, defense, and special teams. You cannot say all phases without then offering
Thank you.
to explain what all three phases were.
Correct.
It's the coaching description of broadcasters saying you need clear and obvious, indisputable video evidence. Remember, you need obvious video evidence for you to overturn this call. Well, when did that happen? So all three phases, offense, defense, and special teams.
People forget about special teams.
That's what we need. We're going to do that. All three phases today during the next 4 hours. Offense, defense, special teams. We will talk with Adam Teicher coming up at 11 o'clock, and we'll get his thoughts on the Chiefs, get his thoughts on Willie Gay's suspension. That came down yesterday afternoon, and so we will start the show today talking about that, but we'll talk with Adam Teicher at 11 o'clock about that, about what the Chiefs do now, where they go from here the next 4 weeks. Pretty crucial games over the next 4 weeks to not have the juice man out there on defense, someone who brings a lot to the Chiefs' defense and is an integral part of it. We'll talk with Adam Teicher about that. Braden Gall will be our guest coming up at noon. We'll talk some college football with him, but no clue what we will get into and discuss. KU, Houston, K-State, OU coming up this weekend, Mizzou, Auburn this weekend. Another Power 5 job is open with Herm Edwards being fired. Nebraska, Arizona State are open now. So is it Lance Leipold to Nebraska and Kleiman to Arizona State? Or is it flipped Kleiman to Nebraska, Leipold to Arizona State? Like, which one of those schools hires the Kansas head coach?
It's actually going to be Leipold to Mizzou. Eli back to KU. It's a very rare swap. Herm Edwards, your next coach of the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
I'm okay with
That makes sense that you would be. That makes sense.
Based on
Can I
evidence,
interest you in Herm Edwards?
based on evidence we have, yes, as an analyst, you can interest me in Herm Edwards watching him on ESPN and giving me entertainment.
You don't want his weird fit, underachieving team, and all those NCAA investigations? Come on!
I don't want somebody who's the head coach but is acting as the CEO. That I have a general manager of the athletes and the roster, and I've got all of these other different odd, unique, non-conventional wisdom in college football trying to recreate the wheel and split the atom, and it doesn't work. So I don't need that. I need him on my TV talking some football or on a stage motivating my my employees at whatever business I run.
I'll put you down as a maybe.
That's right. 913-912-4810. Braden Gall will be our guest coming up at noon. And a couple of other things to get into with Braden Gall if we have time. And then Todd Leabo, since we haven't heard from him today, Todd Leabo will join us at 1 o'clock. We got some fact or fiction today with Todd Leabo. It's been a while since we've had him in studio, since the Chiefs threw out training camp and the preseason games. We were hearing from the Chiefs on Tuesdays. And then last week was a irregular week, so they talked on a Tuesday, did the Chiefs, and he was out there. So today begins the regular weeks for the Chiefs moving forward now.
We get a Monday night in like 2 weeks, I think, 3 weeks, and then for real.
That's right.
It's almost normal.
That's right. But a noon kickoff, noon Sunday, very mid-2000s feel to this weekend.
Chiefs-Colts, noon kickoff. Very mid-2000s. Absolutely.
Yes. And so many of these games, like you got to look and it, I talked about it when the schedule was released and the times and everything. It was, back in the day, you knew what you were doing at noon on Sunday. You were watching the Chiefs game. Unless they were playing the Raiders or the Broncos or the Chargers, a divisional game on the road, then you were watching a 3 o'clock game, 3:05 typically. Sometimes 3:25, but typically 3:05. And since they've been really good, which is great, you do have to check the schedule to see when they're going to. Is it a Monday? Is it a Thursday? Is it Sunday night? Is it noon? Is it 3:25? When are they kicking off this weekend? But you get a nooner. You get a little afternoon delight coming up on Sunday with Chiefs and Colts. And so
after that, it's just funny. It's Sunday at noon. And then Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Bills afternoon, top slot on CBS, Niners 3:25 on Fox. Sunday Night Football against the Titans. That could get flexed. And then you get your next nooner with the Jags after that. So you get a breath of mid-2000s normalcy before it's straight back to prime time for these guys.
Can they flex already? Should they be able to flex in week 3? Because they need the Bills-Dolphins game to be flexed to Sunday Night Football.
Oh, yeah.
And get Broncos-49ers out of there.
Yeah, co-sign. Let's get it done.
I don't need more Nathaniel Hackett national TV watching him at a 3:25 on a Sunday or a Monday or Sunday night game. I don't need more boobery from Nathaniel Hackett in a standalone game. I don't want to watch it. I want to watch Bills and Dolphins not playing at the exact same time the Chiefs and Colts are playing. That's what I want to do.
That needs to move. That undoubtedly, we've got a problem for Bills Dolphins. I will watch Nate Hackett if he's in front of me on my television.
I know.
I will. It's sort of like, I imagine it's what it was like watching Evel Knievel back in the day, where it's like, I guess let's just see if he dies. Let's just tune in and see if he falls into the Grand Canyon. I think Nathaniel Hackett might do that coach-wise. I think we could see him in a big hole of some sort.
Who would be better at the other person's job? Nathaniel Hackett as Evel Knievel or Evel Knievel as a head coach in the NFL as Nathaniel Hackett?
I don't think that Evel Knievel would die on a sideline, and I think most of us would die on Evel Knievel's motorbike.
Yeah.
So I guess I would hire Evel Knievel to be my head coach.
What I'm saying is that Evel Knievel is better at Nathaniel Hackett's job than Nathaniel Hackett would be at Evel Knievel's job. That's really what we're saying.
I think that's almost undeniably true.
Yeah, I think it's probably true with every NFL coach, every single NFL coach. Probably.
I think Andy Reid's a great head coach. I do not think he would be a great stuntman.
No, I don't. Who would be the best stuntman? Like Mike Vrabel?
Oh, that's good. I was going to say Kingsbury, but I think Mike Vrabel, I think he might have gotten
Kingsbury's
it
too pretty.
Yeah.
Kingsbury, he's not going to want to mess up that face. He's too pretty.
No, Vrabel's doing it out of helmet.
No.
Oh, it's Dan Campbell.
It's Dan Campbell.
Dan Campbell.
Dan Campbell with the Lions.
Yep. Yep.
Dan Campbell, that's an obvious one. Like Vrabel was the first one that came to mind, and I'm like trying to think, like, oh yeah, Dan Campbell. That's easy.
Those are your best two choices, though. I think Mike Tomlin, sneaky third, but I mean he's third on that list. But I don't think he'd blink. Certainly, his eyes would be wide open the whole time.
I don't know that there's another one out there. I think those are the two. Dan Campbell is the easy leader in the clubhouse, and there might be a gap between him and Vrabel, and then a gap between Vrabel and everyone else.
It's too bad Brian Flores isn't currently a head coach. That would have been, I think he could have had a chance.
Yeah.
I think Sean McDermott would go skydiving, but none of these are.
No.
Robert Saleh?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
Those are just guys. I'm just telling you guys who seem like they're in better shape than most.
Robert Saleh to me would be, okay, who would you put in a ring in an MMA fight first?
Yep.
I'd go Robert Saleh.
You're right. I'm with you.
But as a stunt man, you know what? Bleep it. Bleep you, Tom Cruise. I'm doing my own stunts. Something like that. Dan Campbell, I shouldn't say bleep you, Tom Cruise, or I'm inspired by you, Tom Cruise.
Right.
You aren't the only one to do this, Tom Cruise. I'm doing my own stunts as well. That'd be Dan Campbell.
Yeah, I just went through the AFC team by team.
Yeah.
Clearly Vrabel's the AFC winner there, and I cannot imagine Dan Campbell getting knocked off in the NFC unless Mike McCarthy really surprises me.
No, Mike McCarthy's not going to do that. Not at all. Mike
McCarthy hasn't surprised me in about 10 years.
Mike McCarthy would be the one to try to do his own stunt, but then it would be like Tom Cruise when he fractured his ankle.
That's right.
The one time Cruise did, get hurt in doing his own stunts. It is pretty phenomenal that he does his own stunts and everything. That's pretty crazy and stupid. But McCarthy would be the time where he fractures his ankle jumping from building to building.
I think McVay would want to be that guy, but I just don't think he can do better than Vrabel in the AFC and Dan Campbell in the NFC. I think that's a great call.
Those are the answers. So all that to say, Todd Leabo will join us at 1 o'clock today. 913-912-4810. We'll get into some text throughout the show today. We didn't get into text yesterday, so I do want to make a point to get to the text line today throughout the show, 913-912-4810. We start with Willie Gay.
Yep.
Let's get into the conversation. Willie Gay suspended yesterday for 4 games, and there will not be an appeal from Willie Gay. My first thought when I heard that come out was, oh, yeah. As in, oh, that's right. We had briefly mentioned it when he was arrested in January that it was, okay, something to keep an eye on for next year. It won't affect him this year unless the Chiefs sit him for the divisional game against the Bills and the game against the Bengals, unless he's suspended internally from those games. We know he played in those games. But it's something that the NFL will certainly be looking into, and we'll wonder if they'll have a say in this. He then had the diversion that he agreed to in June, I think it was?
Correct.
And it was... July. And it was brief in that came out, and it was, well, that's done, and we'll see if the NFL is going to do anything with Willie Gay. And then football started with training camp and preseason games, and it completely went out of mind, honestly. And then that came down yesterday, and it was, oh yeah, we did mention that, wondering, is the NFL going to be involved in any way, shape, or form? I was surprised that it was 4 games. But when I hear that he's not going to appeal, and it was an agreed upon suspension to a degree, it's a final, the wording by Nate Taylor made it sound to me that this was negotiated with Willie Gay, his representatives, NFLPA, and the league for a 4-game suspension, and we will not appeal if it's just 4 games.
Nate's specific phrasing on that was, the NFL said the 4-game suspension is the final resolution. I do not know if that is if they are saying it's the final resolution because it was something they had a discussion about and then landed on 4 games, or if the NFL just said, here's 4 games, tough luck, because even here in the most microscopically dissected era of NFL football, I still don't fully understand how the NFL suspension and appeals process works.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is indicative of a lot of the reaction to this so far.
Well, here's where I think this is negotiated. When he says it's the final resolution, and then Willie Gay's side says they will not appeal. That tells, if he's not going to appeal, if this was the NFL just said you're suspended 4 games, kind of standard operating procedure to say, well, I'm going to appeal 4 games for a misdemeanor that I got a diversion for, and if I don't get in trouble for 12 months and I show that I'm going to mental health counseling, then that is wiped clean and expunged from my record. How am I going to be out 4 games? No, I'm going to appeal this. But the way that it's classified legally with the Overland Park Police Department, that was classified as domestic violence. It was misdemeanor destruction of property under $1,000, classified also under domestic violence. The NFL, domestic violence is a minimum 6 games. If you are arrested, and it is all levels of domestic violence. Now, that 6 games can go up to lifetime. It can be a year, 2 years. You know, Ray Rice, that wasn't going to be 6 games. It is a minimum of 6 game suspension. And if I'm guessing, reading the tea leaves, speculating, all of those things that we say, probably don't do, but with trying to figure out how it's a 4 game suspension, and people are like, hold on, Deshaun Watson got 11 and Willie Gay gets 4 for a misdemeanor breaking a vacuum and door frame. Like, look, it wasn't I'm upset and let me throw a spoon. Like, he broke a vacuum, he broke an air purifier, he broke a door, he broke the door frame. So let's live in reality of what that scene would look like, okay? It's classified as domestic violence. And classified as domestic violence, the NFL has a, boom, minimum 6 games. If I'm reading the tea leaves, this to me is Willie Gay, NFLPA, his group going to the NFL and say, let's go to 4 games, and I'm not in level 1 of domestic violence. I'll agree to 4 games. I won't appeal, because if you give me 6, I will appeal. This is going to be expunged from my record, all of that stuff. We'll settle on 4 games, and I am not in level 1, because level 2 is a lifetime suspension. I'm not in level 1 of the domestic violence disciplinary action for the NFL, and I'll do 4 games, and I will not appeal. That's my guess on what took place here, because it was classified as domestic violence, and the NFL goes 6 games minimum suspension, and he's not going to appeal.
There are a lot of levels to this, and there's a bunch of things where I don't want to be heard a certain way, and I if anybody was seeing my Twitter yesterday as all this was happening, I will err on the side of over-explaining on this one and over-couching on this one, because I very much don't want this to end up devolving into something it's already devolved to on Twitter and places similar, I'm sure, where you go, he got 4 games for breaking a vacuum. This is Deshaun Watson got 11 games for being a serial sexual assaulter. That part's true. The NFL will have to have every suspension they hand out for hopefully the rest of time will be measured against the Deshaun Watson suspension. It should be both as a reminder of the NFL's ineptitude there and their weakness in that moment, and as a reminder of what Deshaun Watson did. That's fair game. It doesn't actually impact what Willie Gay was going to get. The NFL, hopefully, wasn't cross-referencing totally unrelated things to their own bumbling around the Deshaun Watson situation. And so I don't want to do the Willie Gay got 4 games for breaking a vacuum, because, as you said, put yourself in the scene, okay? You have a newborn and I believe prematurely born baby that has to be incredibly stressful. I'm sure everyone in that situation was in a bad spot. But you have the destruction of some of the property. You have the police call, which was allegedly because Willie Gay would not leave the residence. You have him... I believe this is described in the recording, in the log, that he actually hung up the phone, according to the police report, of his ex-partner's phone call and would not leave when he was asked to leave. You can't do any of that.
And the phone case was broken as well, so it was another piece of property, too. You
can't, I mean, you're not going to make yourself any logical friends by going, all I do is break a vacuum. If we had, this is Seth Kaiser mentioned this point, when he and Nate and I were talking on Times Ours right after this yesterday. He went back to the Richard Sherman thing. You hear Richard Sherman was banging on the door of his father-in-law's house or whatever it was, and you go, that's kind of weird. You see the video doorbell footage, and you go, oh, man, this is horrible. This guy's having a crisis. Someone was in danger here. If we had video of this scene, maybe it's 6 games, maybe it's 8 games, maybe there's outrage at the time, maybe we would go, hey, you know what? There was not actually a real severe threat for danger here, and it was just ugly and messy and all of those things. The truth is there's a lot there we don't know. Mm-hmm. And so the actual content of the suspension, I was surprised that it was 4 games. And because of the timing, I thought we were clear of ever seeing Willie Gay suspension, because why would you do that after week 2 of this season? The 2 places where I think the NFL deserves everything levied against them is comparing things to the Deshaun Watson suspension. That is fair game. And asking about the timing of what changed, where, again, the diversion agreement was on, he signed on June 15th. I have here July. You said June the first time. I corrected you and said July. June 15th was when he signed the diversion agreement per Jesse Newell and the star of the story at the time. He's also accused of pushing his partner onto the couch. His attorney has denied that. We don't know. The timing of this is bizarre. I hope that does not make for a clear path for people to totally minimize the incident in its entirety. It's a delicate balance here.
I am not comparing the two, so let's preface that first and foremost. But what you're describing and what I had talked about is, like, you know, you hear those things that are broken, imagine what the scene would look like, and then say, wow, all he got was 4 games, right? And it being classified as domestic violence, misdemeanor or not. The Ray Rice video, again, not saying that you mentioned the Richard Sherman one, the Ray Rice video, not comparing the two at all. Making a point here. When the police report came out that said Ray Rice struck his fiancée, rendering her unconscious, then the video came out, and people were like, oh my God, stop showing the video, right?
Right.
My opinion on the air at that time was, don't stop showing the video. Mm-hmm. Keep showing the video, because we read the police report, yet people were not outraged by the police report. And my point was, what do you think striking a woman, rendering her unconscious, looks like? Mm-hmm. The video is what it looks like.
Right.
We read it, but we sometimes can't take ourselves to that level to say, I don't even want to imagine what that would look like, so I'm going to read it, and then I move on. I see it. I can't ignore it at that point. There is video of that. But by seeing the video, it does give you an idea of what those scenes look like in your mind and how terrifying it could be for others involved or that person involved.
There was a former NFL player within the last year, I think, that had a video of where you have some destruction of property and just horrendous, by the book, domestic violence. But to that point, that's another example where when you see it, it totally reframes where you're coming from.
And we don't know what happened here in terms of visually. We know description-wise, and we know property that was broken.
Also worth noting, none of the accusations even rise to the levels of some of the examples we've pointed to for how video can change things. So that's where there are a lot of levels to this. That's where there's a lot of gray area. It's very difficult.
And that's all I'm saying. It's not the same. I'm not saying it's the same to where there was physical violence, because the police officers have said in the report that there were no injuries. There was no physical violence with this. It was destruction of property under $1,000. It took place in the home of his son's mother. Right. I don't know if they were still together or not at the time, but it took place there, therefore classified as domestic violence. My point being, the 4 games makes more sense because the NFL and the restructured CBA has said domestic violence is 6 games minimum. That's the starting point. And when this is listed as that, the NFL more than likely was, this is a 6-game suspension. Okay, we're going to appeal because it was a misdemeanor. There was no, according to the police, there was no physical altercation. This was breaking of property, and there's diversion, and in a year, it's not even going to be on his record anymore. We're going to peel this thing down. Unless we come to an agreement, we'll take 4 games, and I won't appeal, but I don't want to be in level 1 of the domestic violence program. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's what took place, but when I hear that the resolution is final and Willie Gay will not appeal, that tells me there was a negotiated suspension between the two, because 6 games is probably minimum.
so with all of that, I think we've got our groundwork out there in a responsible, useful way. I'm just going to give ourselves a little pat on the back and say I think that we've laid out the foundation that this story requires. How on earth does that happen on September 19th? How on earth
with that.
two games into the season this comes around? And here's where, again, this isn't really about the incident that night with all the things we just laid out. To take all of the surrounding circumstances. If Deshaun Watson had a year an indefinite plus suspension, and Willie Gay's suspension would have come down during training camp even, to say, hey, this is going to be these first 4 games. We had plenty of time from the end of the agreement in June, which again, June 15th was whenever he signed that agreement, the diversion agreement. And the drug and alcohol testing anytime for a year, paying the $500 and change, all of that. You have the remainder of June into July into August. And we are now basically 3 months removed from the diversion agreement.
Yeah.
With 2 games having been played. Whenever I got the notification yesterday, I saw it very quickly, and then I began the whole shuffle to the desk to do all of the things. Right. I saw Willie Gay 4-game suspension and then like a capital P for what was going to say personal conduct policy. I immediately just mentally assumed that he had gotten dinged for some sort of PEDs. Like, I thought, boy, Willie Gay cannot catch a break. Like, man, it really seemed like he was getting together. I was formulating that thought between my kitchen table where I was having a sandwich and my office where I was sitting down to write all this stuff up. But between those spots, I had come up with a whole thought process. Man, that is so disappointing, so physically gifted. I wonder what it was. And I go, oh, this is from the thing in January. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a surprise. It would have been less surprising for him to have gotten dinged for something completely different than for this to make its first NFL-based appearance in September 2022. That is the thing where and also, if the NFL has a logic behind any of that, we don't know it because they haven't told us.
Absolutely right.
The NFL has earned no goodwill or no benefit of the doubt here. But that is, again, a slightly separate conversation from the actual merit of the suspension.
And there will always be the percentage of the Watson scale. And this is 36% of a Watson scale.
Yep.
Like, this was not 36% of what Deshaun Watson did, but that's going to be the comparison, the basis of comparison moving forward because of what the NFL did, as egregious as that was. I think there's 3 parts to the story. I think it's the suspension, the length of it, and what took place there resulting in the suspension. Why did it come down on September 19th like you talked about? And then moving forward now, the Chiefs and their linebacking position and what they do on defense. We'll talk about that on the other side. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Or can he actually go through a... Sorry. I'm getting choked up about this Patriots dynasty being over.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
We'll talk with Adam Teicher coming up at 11 o'clock about the Willie Gay suspension, what it means moving forward, this Chiefs defense, the win versus the Chargers, some areas of improvement that he looks at that the Chiefs could certainly use, and then the Colts game coming up this weekend at noon on CBS. That game has moved another half point towards the Chiefs. It's now sitting at 7. 6.5 yesterday was 7. What did you get it at Sunday while the Colts were
3.5?
3.5. Man, I'm so mad.
3.5.
I'm so mad I did not look ahead. Like, immediately after the Chiefs and Chargers, or immediately after the Chiefs and Cardinals game, once that was over, I looked at the Chiefs and Chargers and it was 3, and I put money on the Chiefs at -3. Luckily, I just got the no action because, as we find out, there's the cover by the Chargers. If you get it anything over 3, you ended up losing. But if you got it at like Chargers 4, 4.5, because there were some people like 4.5, I'll take the Chargers now. Yeah. What if you bought down 1/2 point from 3 to 2.5, and then you put Chargers at 4.5 and you nailed the middle? Good for you. So we'll talk with Adam Teicher about that. That game is now a 7-point favorite for the Chiefs. So let's talk about the Chiefs do now.
Yeah.
There is no Willie Gay for the next 4 weeks. No Willie Gay against the Colts, the Bucks, the Raiders, and the Bills, which is a huge one to not have Willie Gay out there against a guy like Josh Allen to be able to run around and be fast and sideline to sideline, etc. So the question then is, what do they do at this point? Do they bring in somebody specifically to take Willie Gay's spot, a Chanel or Elijah Lee, or do they bring in and just go the way that Andy Heck and Andy Reid do the offensive line and say, we're going to put our best 5 out there and we'll figure out, all the different positions, but we're going to go with our best 5. Do the Chiefs go, okay, who are our best linebackers without Willie Gay? Is it Nick Bolton and Darius Harris, even though they both are the green dot and the mic? Do we move Harris or Bolton to the will and we just insert Harris, and therefore Harris and Bolton are 2 most talented linebackers after Willie Gay, or Harris the best after Willie Gay? We're going to put that guy on the field and figure out the responsibilities after that. That seems the most ideal for me, because I'd rather that than say, well, no, Leo Chanel's got to play because that's the position, or Elijah Lee or whatever. No, I want Harris and Bolton to be on the field, and I think Spags can figure out responsibilities and positions.
It's going to be interesting, specifically also with the 4 games that we're looking ahead to, because you are seeing 4 very different quarterbacks, very different offenses.
Right.
So I will say what I believe will not be happening. I do not believe that anybody is going to just say, all right, you're Willie Gay now, because none of these guys are.
Yeah.
I think there's a legitimate argument that Willie Gay is the 3rd or 4th most irreplaceable player on this defense, and 2 of those guys are Justin Reed and Juan Thornhill at safety, which is partially about what's behind them, and also they're excellent players. But I'm making Chris Jones number 1. I think Chris Jones is not on this defense. Things change and get scary quick. But Gay is up there. You mentioned what I think is maybe the most interesting bandage for like the quote-unquote base packages would be moving Nick Bolton over to back to Will, where he spent most of his time last year. You can keep the green dot on him. You can let him keep calling the defense, but then Darius Harris can play the mic. Willie Gay has played almost 80% of the snaps through the first 2 games. Nick Bolton has played almost 90% of the snaps. No other linebacker has played meaningful snaps beyond that. Leo Chanel has 32 total defensive snaps this year, and he is 3rd with a bullet.
What did Harris get against the Cardinals? Because I know he played.
He has 18 on the season. Elijah Lee has 8 on the season.
Wow.
I don't know the split from game to game there.
Darius Harris had 3 against the Chargers. He played 3 snaps.
I don't think they've been playing a 2 linebacker defense, essentially. So how they're going to actually make that work now with only 1 linebacker that they clearly trust is going to be challenging. I know people are excited about Leo Chanel. Leo Chanel is ready to run forward and to hit hard when he does that. Leo Chanel is not ready to move left, right, or backwards, or any of the other sort of interstitial directions in between. he started to move forward and hit you. That could be really useful against Josh Allen on the move. That could be really useful against the Colts with Jonathan Taylor. And you have to figure out where they're going to attack in the mid-range, of course, in the passing game. But whenever it comes to specifically Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, specifically Derek Carr and the Raiders with Darren Waller out there, I get extremely nervous. I think Brian Cook makes a lot of sense to be kind of the more nickel linebacker. This is a weird, very specific name drop, but it was the big ADA signing last year before the start of the season, and Dan Sorensen was there. And I talked to Dan Sorensen for 5 or 6 minutes about all sorts of stuff.
Would you ask him 15 questions?
I was thinking 5 or 6 minutes might have been a little bit generous for what I just named off there. But one of the things we talked about was his role in the defense and being that sort of safety hybrid linebacker, whatever. And at one point, he just called himself casually. I'm paraphrasing now from memory, but he paraphrased, just said something about him just being the weak side linebacker in a given circumstance. He didn't say, we were talking about during the break, he didn't say he was the Joker or the Buffalo or the whatever.
I thought of one. Robber.
He didn't say that he was the robber.
He's playing the robber. The 90s, early 2000s of this is a safety, but he's sort of like rolling around the field. He's playing our robber. He's our Joker position. He's playing our star position on this team. He's the cowboy on this team, right?
He wasn't the buck knife or whatever. Yeah. He just said he was playing linebacker. Now, where you miss Dan Sorensen is right now because Brian Cook has the physical tools at a better place than Dan Sorensen does. I have no idea how ready Brian Cook is to be in a role like that. I don't know how ready the Chiefs were for the suspension to come down. I don't know if they've been planning for this 4-game stretch or if they were blindsided by it yesterday. We'll get a little bit of information from Andy Reid tomorrow and then Spags on Thursday, but I think that it's going to be a combination that is probably going to be matchup dependent. Because there's just Elijah Lee is not just going to get to go be Willie Gay, Diet Willie Gay. This team doesn't have Diet Willie Gay on it. No. They've got a bunch of different linebackers where Willie Gay is the most unique of them all, and Nick Bolton is already carrying a lion's share of that burden.
Willie Gay played 92% of the snaps against the Chargers. He missed 6 total snaps on defense. One of those was because of the injury when he was out for a snap on 3rd down and whatever, and he went down. It might have been a cramp or whatever. It left the game, came back in. So non-injury, he missed 5 snaps in the game against the Chargers. So he was out there for 3 fewer snaps than Nick Bolton. Nick Bolton played 72 of 75. Willie Gay played 69 of 75. One of those, of course, being because he left for one play for injury. So really 70 of 75. Brian Cook and Darius Harris combined for 9 snaps. Combined. Yeah. When they needed guys on the field, Cook and Harris were not guys they went to. Chanel, oddly enough, played 22 snaps in the game.
By far, a big ramp up from week 1.
I mean,
he got some real late work in the blowout.
Yeah,
that was it though.
But in a game that mattered,
yes,
where every possession essentially mattered, even when the Chiefs were up 10, right? They still Chargers score. They got an onside kick. They didn't recover it, but miracle Jets against the Browns, things can happen that the Chargers could have come back, but. Playing 22 snaps, and I'd have to go back and look, and somebody can chart it, or I can even do it in the condensed game to see when those snaps came for Leo Chanel, and maybe that gives us an idea of what takes place this weekend. Because when you're talking about Willie Gay, Nick Bolton missing 3 snaps and Willie Gay missing 6 snaps, Chanel playing 22 means those 3 were on the field for at least 17.
I think I might be able to get to the specific split
15?
on that shortly, if I can find the right graphic thing. But yeah, and some of that is, hey, I really do think whenever they're running in warm-ups, week 1, the tweets were flying that Leo Chanel was warming up with the ones next to Nick Bolton and Willie Gay. That appeared to be true. They just didn't have 3 of those dudes out there very often. So I don't know if that is a lack of faith in Leo Chanel, and so they're playing lighter, or more likely, I think, they're just playing a lot of sub packages. You're not leaving 3 linebackers in the field very often. Is there faith in Leo Chanel there, or is there hesitancy? We're going to find out in a pretty big way.
Yeah, I mean, again, looking through the playtime percentage, I couldn't find Chanel because I was looking lower in the playtime percentage of, okay, there's Cook and Harris and Bush played 2. Like, where's Chanel? I know he was on the field. Dunlap played 17, but where? Oh, he played 22 snaps in the game? He played almost a third of the game? I don't remember him being out there for a third of the game. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Right.
Probably not a good thing if I don't remember. But I do remember him blitzing a couple of times. I do remember him at the line of scrimmage and getting into the backfield a little bit. I remember seeing him there, but not 22 snaps worthy. Maybe that's the answer. I don't know that in a game where you are in a dogfight against your biggest challenger in your division, in a game that you need to win at home, that you're prepping Chanel to take over for Willie Gay the next 4 weeks in that game. Like, you're not doing a practice run against the Chargers. If you were going to do that, that would be week 1 against the Cardinals, that you would have a, quote-unquote practice run for Chanel to step in, and he played 10 snaps against the Cardinals in a blowout.
So I'm looking here. Anthony Reinhardt has done some great, shout out to him, who's done some great data visualization on snap count stuff here. It looks like in the linebacker rotation for week 2, Nick Bolton was the only linebacker on the field 6 times. Bolton and Willie Gay were on the field with each other more than 40 times. And then there are 21 snaps that had Bolton, Gay, and Chanel
21.
all on the field together 21 times. So it does not appear that Leo Chanel was ever on the field with just one other linebacker.
Well, that would be, he played 22 snaps, so that would have to be one of them, right?
I don't know.
One snap with, but either way,
This is only showing Chanel with 21 snaps, so I'm not sure what the margin for error is. But there is only. I'll show you in the break.
Well, you know what, the game book might have changed because this is the game book that came out Friday morning. So on at NFL.com and the Chiefs, and they have the whole game book that's like 25 pages long, and they've got playtime percentage. This is what I printed off Friday morning, and honestly, playtime might have changed since then. So I'll go back and look. Maybe it's 21. Maybe there was an adjustment.
I'll give this a little quote tweet also if you want to see it on Twitter at JB Brisco. I'll put it out there.
Absolutely, do that.
Find some more.
We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. Wrap up this hour. Adam Teicher comes up at 11 o'clock. Braden Gall at noon. Todd Leabo 1 o'clock. Fact or Fiction. More Zone next.
Follow the show on Twitter at J810Anderson, at JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, and at Sports Radio 810. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Dude, it was so nice. The family was gone. Wife was out of the house. I was all alone. Opened up the computer and just got into the salary cap. Oh, what a night.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Have no fear. We have figured out the one snap
The missing
issue.
snap!
We have figured it out. So the NFL game book is right with 75 snaps and Chanel playing 22 of them. But, Josh.
I was thinking, well, there's one fewer snap here in kind of the analytics data bank.
Right.
Didn't the Chargers take one snap and kneel down at the end of the first half? They sure did!
My dear Watson, they did.
So I'm guessing they from the analytics side said, well, we didn't learn anything there. We're not going to count it.
We're not going to count the kneel down. Where the NFL official game book.
I was trying to get some contract details or something, you know?
Right. Game book, game log, snap count that's an official snap in the NFL. Therefore, Chanel being on the field for that with Nick Bolton and Willie Gay counts as a snap.
The takeaway is that Chanel was never on the field without Willie Gay and Nick Bolton.
Yeah,
in
without
week 2.
both of them. Absolutely. We'll talk with Adam Teicher next.
Locally.
You're in the zone
Like, I didn't wake up this morning and say, I hope McCole Hardman hurts a groin today.
with Jason Anderson
I hope McCole Hardman hurts a groin today.
on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
I'll take McCole Hardman's groin. All right, we'll continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you. We head up until 2 o'clock. We'll talk with Braden Gall an hour from now, our college football insider. Todd Leabo at 1 o'clock, and a little Fact or Fiction with Todd Leabo. Right now, talking with our Chiefs insider from ESPN. His name is Adam Teicher. He joins us here in the zone. Adam, what's up, man? How are you, sir?
Good, Jason. How you doing today?
I'm doing just fine, man. Doing just fine. Appreciate you joining us, as always, on a regular Tuesday now. We're getting to these regular Tuesdays with off days and stuff and things like that. So yeah, and a Sunday noon. So the now rare Sunday noon game for the Chiefs. It used to be rare when they didn't play at noon. Now it's like, oh, they're playing Sunday at noon. What a throwback.
Yeah, it's the last one for like 2 months or something. I
Yeah.
think it's in November, right? Before the Chiefs play another November or noon game. So, yeah, let's enjoy.
Yeah,
No doubt.
I bet it was easier to plan your schedule back in the day when it was like Sunday at noon. I know what I'm going to be doing. Sunday at noon. Sunday at noon. Now it's like you got to plan ahead, man. Where you Monday, Thursday, Sunday night, 3:25 noon. You never know, but that's the price you pay for being really good, and that's what the Chiefs are right now. So we know they're good. They're 2-0, but they got news yesterday that was, I guess, surprising. It felt like it came out of nowhere, but then when we look back and reassess everything, it's like, okay, makes sense. What was your response, and what's the takeaway or maybe from the team and things you're hearing about Willie Gay's 4-game suspension?
Yeah, there's no way of painting this in a positive light. I think if you were to ask me who the Chiefs' defensive most valuable player was, it's early through 2 games. I think Willie Gay has a strong claim to that. I guess I might vote for Chris Jones, particularly the way he played in the second half the other night, but Willie Gay has been pretty good, and I think certainly he's number 2 if he's not number 1 in that defensive MVP race for the Chiefs right now. So that's a loss, and the Chiefs really have no one else to replace him. They have no one else who can really do the things he can do. So I don't really know what they're going to do. I'm eager to see how the Chiefs cover for his loss because he did so much, played a lot. I guess if there's any silver lining, if you're the Chiefs, it's that this happened early in the season. So he'll be back by mid-season and hopefully rolling. If you're the Chiefs, hopefully rolling after that. But no way to paint this as a positive. No way.
Do you think the Chiefs were expecting this? That this was something that in the back of their minds, or at least on the back burner, that they knew this was coming down at some point? The timing is interesting. That the diversion took place in June, and it's September 19th when they give him a 4-game suspension.
Yeah, my understanding is this was negotiated, not necessarily with the Chiefs. They weren't involved, but with the NFLPA. That there was going to be no appeal, that was part of this deal, that he was just going to take his medicine at 4 weeks. And so my sense is the Chiefs did know this. I mean, last week they brought up Jack Cochran off the practice squad, a linebacker, an undrafted rookie they have, who looked impressive in training camp, and it sure looked at the time like the Chiefs were preparing for the loss of Willie Gay here. So I do feel like they knew about it at least a little bit ahead of time.
No, that's an interesting point of bringing him up. It was negotiated, as you said. Your understanding, and that's my understanding too. Once I saw the language of they've reached a resolution and Willie Gay will not appeal. If I'm taking a guess, and obviously this is just speculating on what took place. The fact that it was classified by the Overland Park Police Department as a domestic violence offense, that NFL's domestic violence policy is minimum 6 games, and you are immediately thrown into step 1 of the domestic violence personal conduct policy. Step 2 is that you are banned for life from the NFL. I'm wondering if this was negotiated with Willie Gay of, I'll take the 4 games, won't appeal. I also don't want to be in step one of the domestic violence program, and we just move on with the 4 games. And in a year when I've stayed out of trouble, this is expunged from my record, and I'm cleared of all of this stuff, and we move on and put it behind us. That's speculation of what could take place, but again, it's a minimum 6 games for anything classified with domestic violence.
Yeah, it is. So, that very well, the scenario you laid out very well could be the case that, they said, hey, listen, we'll give you 4 games instead of 6 and all that, but, you're going to have to take your medicine and do this. And, and the other thing is, if he had appealed, then maybe this thing drags on till later in the season. Then maybe he misses games in the second half of the season, or possibly even the playoffs. So I feel like for him, it was probably best just to get this over with and do it now, and theoretically stay in shape, be ready to go when he comes back into the lineup.
Adam Teicher is our guest from ESPN. So what do you think they will do? I mean, we'll learn more tomorrow with Andy Reid, and we'll learn even more on Thursday with Steve Spagnuolo. But I wonder, Adam, if they go the route of what the Chiefs typically do on the offensive line, which is best 5 guys out there, kind of figure out positions, but we want the best 5 players playing. If they just say, we're going to put our best 2 linebackers on the field that we have, and if that's Darius Harris and Nick Bolton, and they both play the mic, well, then we'll figure it out and change responsibilities. And we'll have Bolton wear the green dot, but he can move to Will, which he played last year, and Harris will stay at the Mike linebacker and just do what he's been practicing doing, because Bolton maybe is more of a better linebacker to adjust from those things. Or do they go, we replace Willie Gay's position with somebody who's playing Willie Gay's position, whether that's Chanel or Lee? I'm wondering what they end up doing against the Colts this weekend, and really over the next 4 weeks, because the Bucs game and the Bills game really stick out in terms of missing a Willie Gay.
Yeah, there's no doubt. You know what? The Chiefs, I don't think there is a good solution here. There's nobody like Willie Gay. He's so unlike any of their other linebackers that I just don't know. I'm wondering what the Chiefs do, and it's going to be eager to see like everybody else. I mean, I can't see Leo Chenal becoming a full-time linebacker right now. I don't think he's there yet. Is Darius Harris ready for a full? Maybe they look for situations, and in passing situations it's Elijah Lee, and in running situations it's Leo Chenal and Darius Harris. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do, but that's the first thing that struck me is this guy is kind of irreplaceable in that sense that maybe the Chiefs can play some good defense without him, but they can't have one guy do what Willie Gay did. He's just kind of unique in that way.
Any chance they maybe go more Nick Bolton's on the field, and they're going to go 3 safeties with Reed, Thornhill, and then Brian Cook maybe plays closer to the line of scrimmage as maybe a bigger safety, smaller linebacker type player?
That's certainly a possibility. I wouldn't think they would do that a ton, in other words, full time or more than half the time. And, the other thing is you're putting a rookie in there, and you're asking him to do something that maybe you haven't asked him to do yet. Are you comfortable with that? So, that's certainly possible. I think they have a lot of possibilities with what they can do. It's just more what you do and how effective you can be doing it, and how many different solutions you come up with.
Adam Teicher is our guest from ESPN. One other thing that popped in my mind yesterday was, we asked you about it when the issues arose with Frank Clark, and then the pleading and all of that stuff with Frank Clark, and that being now resolved. Concern about Frank Clark missing games this year from the NFL suspensions?
Absolutely you are. I mean, if it took roughly 3 months from the time that Willie Gay, took the diversion program to now. I mean, that's roughly 3 months, and so Frank Clark, When did he, when was that? Earlier this month. So that would be early December there. If we're working on the same time frame, that to me is a little bit mysterious how the NFL does this. They just sort of come out with these things on their own timetable. And sometimes, they claim to do their own investigations. Well, if they do, some of these things can take longer than others. So I think it's probably not wise to say, well, it was 3 months from the time that Willie Gay pleaded out or took his diversion agreement to the time he was suspended. So it's going to be 3 months for Frank Clark. That's probably not a wise comparison to make, but that's what we got to have to go on. So, yeah, I do think it's reasonable that something could happen with him before the end of this season.
Visiting with Adam Teicher from ESPN. He is our Chiefs insider. So let's talk about, I know there's no Willie Gay now for the next 4 weeks, but what we saw in the first 2 weeks, what are you seeing from this Chiefs defense? Because early on, especially holding the Chargers to 17 points and until they were up by 10 and the Chargers had the late drive that scored the touchdown there on a couple of pretty darn good fourth down throws by Herbert, who couldn't do much of anything else because of the injury. And they had the pick six as well. What have you seen through 2 weeks and 2 games of action from this younger, revamped Chiefs defense?
Yeah, there's some things to like. I think their run defense looks to me a lot better. I think part of the reason for that is they're getting better linebacking play between Willie Gay and Nick Bolton. They're getting better linebacking play than I think they have in quite some time. And also, they're just faster. They can chase things down. I feel like that's a factor in their run defense as well. So I feel like, that's encouraging. They need to do better with the pass rush, particularly when they rush 4. They're still not doing a good enough job getting pressure when they rush 4. And that's, I think, a short-term and long-term concern. Because I don't see the Chiefs getting it done this year, being 29th in the league in sacks like they were last year. Now, they're not. Mm-hmm. They're somewhere around the middle of the league right now. I think 14th going into last night's game at least. So they're somewhere around the middle of the league, and that'll probably cut it. But the pressure hasn't been good enough, particularly when they rush 4. So when they rush 5 or more, they've been doing it. They're one of the top teams in the league in terms of pressure. But when they just rush 4, they're near the bottom, and that needs to change.
Yeah, they're on pace to pick up, I think, roughly 11 more sacks than they had last year. So it's not like you're saying, well, they're adding one more game. No, 17 last year. So roughly 11 more. So almost an extra sack per game. It's getting close to that from just 2 weeks of football so far. So we'll see what happens moving forward. I mean, Matt Ryan was on the ground a lot against the Jags.
Yeah, and I think you'd take 11 more if you're the Chiefs. Yeah. That'll get you into the low 40s. I think, 42 or 43?
43, I think, is what it would be this year.
Okay, but the pressure to me is the other part of it, and they're not doing a good enough job with that. That's the part that I think needs to pick up a little bit.
September 8th, Josh looked it up. September 8th is when Frank Clark pleaded no contest.
Okay, all right.
So 3 months, December 8th, that would be right before the Broncos game in Denver?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so who knows?
Hey, maybe they can stall this thing. Who knows? But I would expect that with something, there's a good chance something could come down by the end of the season.
Yeah, it's like the NCAA. Like, what's the time frame? What's the timeline that they work on? Like, sometimes it's 3 months, sometimes it's a year and a half. Maybe it's 4 years, depending on if there's an FBI investigation or not. Who knows? No clue with that. Adam Teicher is our guest from ESPN. So take me back to last Thursday night. It's been 5 days since then, and we've seen the rest of the NFL play in week 2, and things to take away from, the Raiders losing, the Broncos surviving, and the Bills looking, really, really good with their dominant performance last night against the Titans. But the win versus the Chargers, what did you see in that game, and what was your takeaway from this Chiefs team finding a way to pull one out?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of one of those, I think, gritty games that they weren't playing real well and were behind the whole, most of the first 3 quarters, but found a way to, pull back even and go ahead on the big play. And, I think the coaching matchups was dramatic in favor of the Chiefs the other night. And I'll point to Andy Reid kicking that field goal on the first play of the fourth quarter to tie the game at 17-17. I mean, hey, I think, hey, you always think you can get 1 yard, right? Or you should always think you can get 1 yard. But the way the Chiefs have been a mess with their short yardage offense all night, and the two plays before that were just disasters, and could have really and it wound up hurting the Chiefs. You combine that with the fact that they've been behind all game, and this was their chance to pull even. I think Andy Reid showed a nice touch by kicking that field goal there. They got the 3 points, and guess what? They ended up winning by 3 points. So, who knows? Maybe they would have scored the touchdown anyway, but that just didn't look like a confident team down near the goal line or in short yardage situations the other night. So I think that was a big thing for him to go ahead and take that field goal. I think that was the right move, and it proved out that it was the right move.
So Josh and I have talked about it a couple of times with the decision there on 4th and goal to kick the field goal. But to me, one of the other aspects of that, where right move, wrong move, do it in the future, don't do it in the future, take the points, all of that stuff, is it's an Andy Reid that, against the Cardinals on 4th and short, went for it. On 4th and 1, 4th and 2, things like that, was going for it and picking those up against the Cardinals. And 4th and 1 at the goal line and a chance to take the lead, not just tie, he elects to kick the field goal. To me, that's not just it's a hard and fast rule that we're going to do this, we're going to go for it. It's reading what's going on in the game, right? Understandably, but it's also kind of a message of Andy Reid didn't trust his offense to get 1 yard with that offensive line against the Chargers and whatever was going on in the game, which is also another conversation of why this team has struggled at certain points to pick up short yardage situations when it feels like this offensive line should be one of those offensive lines that can reset the line of scrimmage to at least a yard and a half down the line of, a couple of yards down the field. Maybe not at the goal line. That's more difficult to do. But this offensive line we've talked about seems to be more suited for run blocking, yet that hasn't really been the case except for Michael Burton, who seems to be completely unstoppable when he gets the ball in the little fullback dive. What do you make of it's the decision of, they kick the field goal, they tie the game, but also the fact that he took the 3 points from 1 yard out because clearly he didn't think that there was enough of a chance for them to pick up 1 yard.
No question he didn't, and that's part of why he made the right decision, because what reason would you have to be confident at that point that the Chiefs were going to get that 1 yard? Because they hadn't been doing it all night, and things had been pretty ugly. The two plays before that, both were passes, but still kind of ugly. And the fact he didn't run the ball there, I think, tells you maybe a little bit that, hey, if you were going to go for it, run the ball 3 times. Maybe you'll get 1 yard on one of those 3 plays. So, yeah, I don't have an explanation why the Chiefs aren't better there. I think they have the personnel to be better there, but they aren't. And and they're not the only team struggling in some of these situations. Other teams around the league have had that problem, but they haven't invested as much in their offensive line recently as the Chiefs have. So that should be a strength of theirs. That's something they do need to get fixed, because while I do think that was the right call to kick the field goal there, that's not always going to be the right call, and they need to be able to go to that. And, here's another thing. What's one of the most effective things you do in short yardage, a team can do in short yardage? It's quarterback sneak. The Chargers made it work the other night. Well, the Chiefs don't do that, as we know. I mean, they got spooked out of that a few years ago and haven't done it since. And, okay, well, but you have to find something else to take its place, so we'll see if they come up with something, but they should be better than this, no doubt.
And Blake Bell's out, and we've seen Blake Bell run the sneak there as the tight end going in motion. Kelsey could certainly do that as well. We've seen him do that before as well. We're seeing that around the league too. Alec Ingold for the Dolphins did that on 4th and 1, that he went in motion, got under center with Tua in the shotgun for the Dolphins, and picked up 1 yard on 4th and 1. And then Mark Andrews for the Ravens. In the same game, you had both teams that did not use their quarterback for the quarterback sneak. They used the tight end coming in motion and then taking the snap and running the quarterback sneak there as well. So I don't think it is something that just the Chiefs are doing. I think other teams around the league are saying, if we don't have Josh Allen, and Tom Brady might be the greatest quarterback sneak, in the history of the league, and not that guy, why risk an injury to our quarterback when we can have this 240-pound guy take the snap and drive forward and pick up the first down from that standpoint, which is, fine. That's great. Whether it's quarterback sneak or tight end sneak seems to be, a very effective play that isn't stopped very often, because there's probably going to come a time, Adam, to where Michael Burton doesn't pick up a first down every time he touches the ball. I would guess. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there isn't a time. Maybe that world doesn't exist, Adam.
Well, maybe he's a guy the Chiefs could do that with if that's something they wanted to do. That's a guy you might look at doing that, at least while Blake Bell is out. And, you're talking about bigger guys here, and Jerick McKinnon is not a bigger guy, but he was quarterback and played quarterback in college some. So that's a guy I've always thought they should be doing some wildcat-type stuff with. Doesn't mean he'd be effective in a quarterback sneak situation, but I think he can do that kind of stuff.
You think the third down sweep to McCole Hardman is out of the playbook?
Yeah, maybe it might be. They're looking for ways to get him involved, getting him the ball in kind of, that wasn't certainly open field situation with all the Chargers around him, but, they're looking for ways to do that. So, hey, it didn't work the other night, but I feel like that still can be an effective play for the Chiefs.
By the way, I looked it up this morning, and I meant to bring it up there with Michael Burton. He's 9 for 9 on carries resulting in first downs.
Is that right?
With the Chiefs in the 2 years. 8 for 8 last year, 1 for 1 this year. So he is 9 for 9. And he was 6 of 7 in 2020 with New Orleans. So he is actually 15 of 16 rushing the football, picking up a first down. So you know what? There is a world where he doesn't pick up a first down. It's just really tough to get there. It's a very long trip to get there. It's past Mars to find that world.
Oh, I tell you what, if you're telling me he's going to do 15 out of every 16 he's going to convert, then I'm good with those that percentage, and I maybe think about using him a lot more. Yeah,
and down at the goal line if that's what it takes, because whether it's that particular play, they practice it so often so it's blocked really well, or is there something about Burton maybe that close to the line of scrimmage can find a little crack in the in the defense, or slide through a hole, or maybe go to a different spot that wasn't blocked well, that he's really good at reading that up close, and he just has that knack. Like, he's not Marcus Allen, but Marcus Allen always had that knack of, like, there was a little sliver and he would slide through there, and it's like, how many running backs would actually see that or make it through that hole? I'm not saying he's that, but 15 of 16 and 9 of 9 with the Chiefs. It can't all just be, wow, that was perfectly blocked every time.
Yeah. Marcus Allen was the best ever at doing that kind of thing. I mean, he was fantastic. But you know what? 15 out of 16 is not bad. I mean, I don't think Marcus Allen was even that good. So, that you bring up an interesting question. I'll have to go back and look at all these Michael Burton runs and see what it is. I feel like just from watching them that in most cases, at least, the line has done a pretty good job in giving him what he's needed. So I don't feel like he's ever really made a hole himself or done it kind of without much help. So, but, interesting. It's entirely possible. I don't remember some instances like that.
Well, and it brings me to sort of the next point on short yardage situations. I think you're good at what you emphasize, or you'd better be in the NFL, or really any coach. Working with Bob Valvano for 10 years, college basketball coach and from a basketball family. And he said that when they do these ESPN games, he said, he'll go to a practice of a coach, and he says it'll take him 20 minutes to know what this coach emphasizes. This is what this coach cares about in the first 20 minutes of the practice. And if he can't tell what that is, that coach doesn't really have a shot at making it. And so it's like, you go to a practice, Bill self-practice, boom, I know exactly what he emphasizes 20 minutes into practice. And so you're good at what you focus on. I mean, clearly they focus on that Michael Burton play. They've run it enough. They've practiced it enough. They look at that as their bread and butter to pick up 3rd and 1 or 4th down and 1, whatever it might be. I wonder if they just emphasize short yardage situations overall as an offensive line, power running game, things like that to a larger degree, as opposed to there's so much of their offense that they can focus on that makes them good in RPOs and getting guys in space and motioning and finding the mismatches and things like that, and the different types of blocking schemes to protect number 15, which is first and foremost the most important thing. That do they spend a lot of time in saying, okay, it's 4th and 1, and you guys got to reset the line of scrimmage. It's 3rd and 1, and we're going to hand off power, and it's going to be a first down, as opposed to 3rd and 1, here's the Michael Burton play. 4th and 1, here's the Michael Burton play. We're going to perfect this. That's going to be our go-to. And then everything else we do is perfecting picking up chunk yards against defenses.
And, you watch the Chiefs practice all year, like as I do, and, they start in May. And they go until September when the regular season starts. It's almost 4 months. And then they take a month off. They take 4 weeks off for that break before camp starts. But other than that, they're practicing straight through. And, it's amazing. I think fans would be interested to know, and the fans that go to St. Joe will know this, they spend almost all of their time working on the passing game. In the offseason, they really can't work on the running game. There's no pads. Contact is not allowed. Well, running game is a contact game. You can't do it without hitting people. So they don't do it at all. And then there are times in camp where they don't have pads on as well. And even when they do, then they work on it. But to me, it's almost impossible to fathom how a team can be as good at that now, where the rules are now, than what it was years ago before they changed the CBA and teams could wear pads as much as they wanted during the training camp and hit as much as they wanted, and you're just going to get better at it. So I feel like it is becoming a little bit of a lost art in the NFL to some extent. Now, some teams are better at it than others, and you say, well, this team is refuting what you say. But I feel like those teams are fewer and farther between, and part of that reason is they just don't get to work on it as much. And certainly the Chiefs don't work on it as much as they used to. It's not like it used to be, and I think it does show a little bit. But they're not the only ones who are burdened by these rules. And so other teams are better at it than the Chiefs are.
Well, yeah, and it depends on what you emphasize. The Tennessee Titans are going to emphasize power run game, and the Detroit Lions offensive line and running game is grading out as one of the best in football through 2 weeks, because Dan Campbell's a punch you in the mouth, we're going to run it down their throats, and we're going to have a nasty offensive line, and this is what we emphasize. This is what we're going to focus on, because Jared Goff ain't going to throw it 50 times a game for us to win. We need to rely on DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams and different ways of creating space for Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is so good that I need to get his damn name right because he's phenomenal. That's what they focus on, and it may just be that the Chiefs emphasize so much other things and say, we're good with Michael Burton. He's going to get it done. We know that. That's what we emphasize in the short yardage situations. But they are, in 2 games, they are 7 of 17 on second, third, and fourth down of 4 yards or fewer. So second and 4 or shorter, third and 4 or shorter, or fourth and 4 or shorter. They're 7 of 17. With this offense, that seems like it's incredibly inefficient.
Yeah, and my sense is that'll go up. You're right, it's not, and my sense that'll go up as the season goes on. But hey, it's like you're making this point. You can't be good at everything. You have to pick you do to some extent have to, pick what you want to emphasize. And clearly, this is one of the things the Chiefs have said. You know what, we'll try to make it work without emphasizing or working on it like we could if we wanted to sacrifice something else.
And I'm good with them emphasizing Patrick Mahomes and maximizing that. Totally fine with all of that stuff. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. Adam Teicher from ESPN is our Chiefs insider. We continue one more segment with Adam. More Zone next.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, you know that the wait is over, Kansas. The DraftKings Sportsbook is here, and NFL action in full swing after 2 weeks of the NFL season.
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
This is a guy through the first 3 quarters of the game had a quarterback rating of, well, now I lost that.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco, Beards. We'll talk with Braden Gall, college football insider, coming up at noon. Adam Teicher from ESPN, our Chiefs insider. As one more segment to go here with Adam, and at the end we'll get his thoughts and prediction on the Colts and Chiefs. But Adam, it's been 2 games into the season, and he has a reception. He is in Sky Moore, has a reception on the fun play against the Cardinals with Mahomes scrambling to his left and throwing back right, sidearm, and Sky Moore breaking a tackle. And he's done, to me, a pretty good job punt returning, that he's catching the football, which is all that matters to me. Like I've said, I think the best punt returner is somebody who's invisible and is not on the field, and they just let it bounce, and then you make sure Patrick Mahomes gets the ball. But he played 2 snaps against the Chargers, did Sky Moore. Those 2 snaps were the Chiefs' kneel downs at the end of the game with Patrick Mahomes when they recovered the onside kick. McCole Hardman was missing some of the game with an injury with his heel. You surprised that through 2 games we're not really seeing much, really, if at all, especially against the Chargers, of Sky Moore?
Yeah, I am, and clearly, against the Chargers at least, Justin Watson had taken his place, Sky Moore's place, as the 4th receiver, and then he got moved up for that time when Hardman was out of the game. So, yeah, I am. That's not what we saw at training camp, and Justin Watson looked like he was going to be more of a red zone guy, and I still think he will be. The Chiefs were going to use him more down there than in other parts of the field, and he was maybe going to be their 5th receiver, but that's not how it's developed so far. So, plenty of time for the Chiefs to change that, but Watson has kind of been their 4th guy, so he's been the guy they've gone to, at least against the Chargers. Not as much against Arizona, but certainly against L.A. the other night.
And you know what? He showed that he was worth the position that the Chiefs put him in, because the route he ran, and he's fast enough to get there because he is a guy who's got pretty good top-end speed. We heard that from Patrick Mahomes when they were down in Dallas of like, hey, Brett, who's this Justin Watson guy? He's pretty fast, and made a great play. And you know what? Concentrated on the football, because as close as that ball was to being tipped, it's an NFL receiver, so you should catch the ball. But that's also 45 yards down the field when you're running full speed, under the lights, and that ball's almost tipped. That can be dropped. And he held on to it, and it was a great route. And he's fast enough that he's clearly got the trust of the Chiefs, and so I don't see that changing anytime soon. I think Justin Watson is securely the number 4 receiver on this team, and Sky Moore's number 5.
It sure looks like that from what we saw in the most recent game. hey, that was McCole Hardman's play. Hardman was out, so Watson was the guy they called on to take his place, and that's what you ask a guy to do. Hey, you're a backup, but when you go in, for whatever reason, make the most of it, and that's what he did. So, yeah, I unless it was just an opponent-specific thing, which is kind of hard for me to believe at this point in the season, that I do think Watson has climbed over Sky Moore.
Visiting with Adam Teicher from ESPN, he's our Chiefs insider. The storyline of the Chargers game, and sports in general brings storylines that you don't expect or can plan for. But there was a time earlier this summer where they were in OTAs and Justin Watson was being talked about a little bit, right? And it was mainly because, Patrick Mahomes asked Brett Veach about who's this guy who's really fast. Okay, cool. He's a special teamer. Will he make the squad? Probably not. They've got Reese Fountain, and boy, you've got Josh Gordon, who they really like. And, he's been injured, but you know what? You take a chance on a Clemson guy who was a stud a couple of years ago. He may make the squad. Justin Watson, cool story. Mahomes likes him. Jalen Watson, they're throwing numbers at the cornerback position. He's a 7th rounder, but it's really about Joshua Williams and this 4th rounder and, what this guy's been doing. And the second game of the season, and to this point, obviously the most crucial game in a what could be division-defining, swinging game, you had guys who I would have lost a lot of money if you'd have said they were even on the roster. Both of these guys make the Chiefs roster, let alone those guys make big game-changing plays for the Chiefs to win.
And Jerick McKinnon scored the other touchdown, and he wasn't on the roster. He didn't sign until the middle of June. So, you could have made a ton of money in the, say, 1st of June. Yeah, you would have. You could have retired by now if, with that parlay, taking those 3 guys. But you know what? That's really, I think, going to serve the Chiefs well. That they've got all these guys that kind of have seemingly come from nowhere and are helping them win games. I think that says a lot about what they have going on here, that it just doesn't always have to be Mahomes and Kelsey and Chris Jones and some of the other guys about, that it can be these less heralded guys who don't play a lot necessarily, who can carry the thing when they get in there.
This is a bigger sort of macro question, and then I'll ask you about the Colts. But, sometimes teams just make plays, and whether it's quote unquote know how to win, or the mindset is there that they are confident that they think they're going to win or make a play, and you sort of just believe it into reality, right? And some teams just constantly have that reputation of that they don't get it done. That's what took place on Thursday night. We talk about the Chargers charging and the Chiefs just simply knowing how to win. Is that just organizational? Is it cultural? Is it coaching that actually puts players in position to do that? And good coaching leads to better players, leads to guys being in position, which leads to opportunities, which leads to making plays in games that could be differences. What do you make of the Chiefs? And I know the Bengals game happened last year, and they did not do that in the second half. And there'll be long, 10-piece, series about what happened in the second half and 20 years from now on Netflix. But it seems like in games like this, the Chiefs in bigger moments have found a way more times than not, and probably much greater more times than not, to make some plays that could be the deciding factor in the game.
It's called having Pat Mahomes on your team.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's easy enough.
That's what it is. There's your 10-part series right there. You have Pat Mahomes, and then you do it often enough, and then you start believing. And, that's, I think, the biggest thing. I think these guys, what happened in the second half against Cincinnati last year, stunned everybody. What was this? We never do this. So it just comes from doing it over and over again. And you're right. It is kind of weird that the Chiefs are almost always the team that in these kinds of games makes the plays to win. But that's what happens when you have some real game breakers, and you go back to that Buffalo game last year between Tyreek Hill and Mahomes and Travis Kelce. That's what really carried him through that time. So, it is, you figure the ball's going to bounce the other team's way every now and then, but it sure helps to have guys like Mahomes and Kelsey for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
and if Chris Jones is going to play the way he did in the second half last week, that's another thing that's going to be in your favor.
Absolutely, yeah. He made some big plays, and touchdown to Jerick McKinnon, which was vintage Patrick Mahomes. The touchdown to Watson, which was third and long, and it was. I mean, that's I said it on Friday. Like, I know literally it's a 7-point play because they got a touchdown, but it's not like if you didn't complete that, you're at the 20-yard line and you kick a field goal. If you don't complete that, you're punting the ball. So that was sort of a do-or-die type play once he throws it deep to Watson. That results in a touchdown. Him running around and finding Kelsey that ended up getting body slammed. They eventually get a field goal from that. The pick six, like there were just some big swing moments, and the fact the Chargers didn't take advantage of a couple of interceptions thrown to them. And that could be the deciding factor in the entire division. We'll see what happens later on, but there's a lot of season left to be played. Adam Teicher from ESPN, what do you think happens on Sunday against the Colts? This line from middle of the Colts-Texans game, Chiefs were favored by 3.5. They are now favored by 7 in this game. So what do you think happens, and if there's a score in mind for Sunday?
Well, the Colts, I know this. They're better than they played so far. They're not an 0-1-1 team against the schedule they played, and they're going home. This is their home opener. They're after last week's dud, they're going to want to come out and play a little better, and they will come out and play a little better. I feel pretty confident in that. But having said that, the Chiefs are the better team, and I don't see Indianapolis ironing out all of its quarterback and offensive problems. So I think the game will be competitive, but I like the Chiefs to cover 7 points. I'll take it maybe 27-13, something like that. I'll take the Chiefs to cover that spread.
All right, we'll see what happens. Adam Teicher from ESPN Chiefs Insider. Adam, you're the man. Really appreciate the time as always, sir. Enjoy the football. We will talk next week.
Good stuff, Jason. We'll talk to you next week.
Absolutely. There's Adam Teicher from ESPN. He is our Chiefs insider. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling, wrap up this hour on the other side of the break. I want to look a little bit closer on, we mentioned bigger plays against the Chargers for the Chiefs and coming through in crucial moments and maybe not realizing they were crucial moments at the time, but they end up being that. And take a look at last night's game between a couple of teams that resulted in a blowout, but could make a case that, the first half there were real opportunities for that to be a much closer game, maybe a much different game. I want to get to that on the other side. Braden Gall, our college football insider, comes up at noon. Todd Leabo, 1 o'clock. Factor Fiction as well. More Zone next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
If I can't be here to try to get you on a technicality once per show, what the bleep is the point of me being here?
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Thank you, Adam Teicher. We'll talk with Braden Gall coming up at noon. College football insider, Braden Gall, 440 Podcast Network, ESPN Radio, Athlon Sports, Fringe Element Podcast, a football show podcast. We'll talk with him about college football, what took place over the weekend. Arizona State now has a coach opening along with Nebraska. KU taking on Duke this weekend after beating Houston. K-State, Oklahoma, not as big of a game with the letdown against Tulane. And Mizzou traveling to take on a really inferior talent-wise, not to Mizzou, but just compared to Auburn of the past, compared to themselves. Auburn team, inferior talent-wise to what we've seen Auburn in the past, and still a touchdown dog with that. So we'll talk with Braden Gall coming up at noon. So looking at last night's game, when you are facing off against really good teams that are better than you are, so like the Chargers versus the Chiefs, people can argue well, the Chargers are a better roster than the Chiefs. Okay, fine, whatever. But to me, the Chiefs are a better team. Talent-wise, one way or another, okay, can you make a case the Chargers should have won that game and the Chiefs stole it from? Yeah, absolutely. I think you certainly could. But I think Patrick Mahomes makes a really big difference. And at the end of the year, I think we'll find that the Chiefs' defense is pretty talented as well. So even if we want to argue one way or another and say they're even or the Chargers are more talented, okay, even if you go that route, I'd still make the case that the Chiefs made plays when they had to make plays in order to win that close game. It was not a close game last night with the Titans and the Bills. Not at all. It got bad quickly in the second half, and to the point that the subs were in the game at the end of the third quarter. I looked up on the screen, and Malik Willis was in there, and I'm like, did Tannehill get? Oh, wait, no, it's just they're done. They've waved the white flag because Tannehill with his back-to-back interceptions. They're like, you know what? No mas. We live to fight another day. We live to fight another day. You don't get that reference. So Bills-Titans last night. The first drive for the Bills, they converted a 3rd and 9, a 3rd and 8, and a 3rd and 2. And they got a touchdown. The Titans then answered with a touchdown, so 7-7. Next drive, the next touchdown drive for the Bills, they converted a 2nd down and 15, a 3rd and 6, and a 4th and 1 to get a touchdown. The third touchdown drive, they had 3rd and 14 at their own 21-yard line, and Josh Allen drew the Titans off sides through a deep pass. It was one of those free plays, so who knows if he'd have thrown it there, but it was incomplete. And then they convert on 3rd and 9. They go down and score a touchdown. The Titans fumble a punt. They muff a punt in which the Bills go 3 and out and kick a field goal.
That was the first punt of the year for the Bills, by the way.
They got the ball back.
They finally punted, and it was one of the best plays you can have for an offense.
They punted, and the other team still didn't run a play without them putting points on the board because they went 3 and out and kicked a field goal. There's 3 points. Ryan Tannehill then threw an interception, which was a short field touchdown. Ryan Tannehill then threw a pick 6. 38 points. 38 points. And those little plays, and they're not little at the time because it's 3rd and 9, and then it's 3rd and 8. It's 3rd and 6, it's 3rd and 14, it's 3rd and 9. They're not little plays, they're huge plays. But in a 41-7 game, you're like, that game wasn't even close. It could have been,
right,
but game flow dictated Derrick Henry was no longer a part of that game. And once it's Ryan Tannehill's game, you're toast.
Game flow might be Josh Allen's new nickname.
Because he was flowing in that game. That's for sure. But you get those stops and get off the field if you're Tennessee early in the game. And you're able to continue to pound Derrick Henry and use him. Bills probably still win because they're better. But it might have been one that came down to the end. But you got to make those plays against better teams. The Black...
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Henny, he can't come from Lafayette to
Speaking
Baton
of
Rouge.
English, I'm not pushing Napier.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
I'm going to put your drawers in the crack of your ass.
Listen. Oh, that is such a beautiful soundbite. Beautiful, beautiful soundbite. The LSU post-game hosts last year arguing over Billy Napier, if they should hire him or not. Hey, he's a Florida coach, and you got Brian Kelly. All right, 913-912-4810. Thank you to Adam Teicher in the previous hour from ESPN, our Chiefs insider. Let's talk some college football. Braden Gall, 440 Podcast Network, ESPN Radio, Athlon, Fringe Element Podcast, a football show podcast, joining us here in the Zone. Braden, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Much like teams in your area, converting on third down difficult for the Titans.
Yeah,
So we're doing all right.
You know what? I just talked about it defensively, converting on third down as well, getting off the field. Mentioned that how maybe a closer sort of talent wise can get out of hand is when the Bills' first touchdown drive, they convert 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, and 3rd and 2. And the second touchdown drive, they convert 2nd and 15, 3rd and 6, 4th and 1. They score a touchdown on the next drive, and they convert a 3rd and 9. You fumble a punt and give them a field goal. You throw a pick six, and all of a sudden it's 41-7.
Or you go 3 for 20 on 3rd and 4th downs, and you lose to a group of 5 team. So there's that as well. So also
can be an issue with teams. No doubt about that. Braden Gall, let's talk some college football here, and we'll get to that K-State Tulane game in which there was that inability to convert and extend drives. But converting tickets already through 3 weeks in the over 2.5. Cashing tickets, certainly good. If you took the advice of you, and I talked about it, that I loved the KU over 2.5. I loved the K-State over as well. I did not expect, Braden, that 3 weeks in I would be cashing an over KU 2.5, over-under ticket. But that's the case, and it is incredibly improbable. But yet week by week when we discuss it, I guess looking back individually, it doesn't seem as improbable as it would seem before the season started, not knowing what they would really look like.
I mean, I want to agree with you, but I don't want to take points away from myself because, again, I believe we did an entire show where I screamed at the top of my lungs for everyone under the sun to hammer the over on 2.5. So I'd be lying if I didn't expect it to happen in at least. I thought they could have hit the over in 2 games, actually. So I'm going to take all the credit I possibly can. We don't get too many victory laps in this business, so I'm going to take mine. I had the over for 2.5 for Vanderbilt as well. That one hit in week 3. So far so good. Now a few others aren't looking as great, but we just won't tweet about those. No one will ever know all the parlays you missed if you don't post them, because I'm convinced that people put like 12 parlays together each weekend, and then they hit once every 2 weeks, and they're like, look, I made $180 on 5, and it's like, can you post all the ones you lost, please? It's strange. You never see all the tickets that people lose. But listen, get back to all joking aside, Kansas is a good football team. Like, are they good enough to get to 7 wins? I don't know, but they're a good football team. They beat one of the best group of 5 teams as a 10-point dog by double digits. They went on the road and won a Big 12 game, even if it was the sort of the quirky double-digit points in overtime, 2-score overtime thing, which still happened. They're a good football team. They have a good quarterback. They have a good coach. They're a good football team. How good? I don't know yet. I think the Big 12 is very, very balanced. I think we talked about this before the season started, where, I mean, basically everybody is interesting. I mean, Texas Tech played well against NC State. They beat Houston. I think that there's enough interest in Texas messed around with UTSA, and then they came, handled their business. But that Texas seems to be significantly improved. Iowa State is replaced every single major, record-setting piece in the history of that program, and they seem to be off to a hell of a start. This weekend is going to be a great game with Baylor traveling to Ames. I think that's as physical a game as you'll ever get in the Big 12. Oklahoma State's just quietly going about its business. Oklahoma looked extremely good and very much in control of that new offense run by Jeff Levy. Defensive line looked good. Like, you go down the line and down the list, TCU hasn't lost a game yet. I know schedule and the skillets this weekend, but there's a lot to like about what this league is doing. Are any of them good enough to make the playoffs? I don't know yet. But we're going to learn a lot about these teams this week and in the coming weeks. But it is a fascinating league, 1-10. And if Kansas is now, a bowl team, then it totally changes sort of the bottom of this conference, because everyone else seems to be pretty solid. Like, again, if West Virginia is the worst team in the league, I think that's a pretty, I don't want to say good, but that's a decent team. That's nowhere close to Arizona State, Colorado, Georgia Tech. Colorado's the worst group of Power 5 team I've seen in a long time.
Oh.
So.
They're awful. What would you set a new over/under on for Kansas then? They're 3-0, 9 weeks to go. What would you 5.5? The new one? Or
I think that's I think 5.5 is probably the way to go. If you get 3 Big 12 wins, that would be a heck of a season, man. And that gives you a bowl game. Potentially gives you a bowl game. I think you have to get to 4 to get to a bowl game. Big 12 wins, that is, or they've got one more, I think. So it's in the non-conference. Oh, that's right. They got undefeated Duke. That's right, in the basketball game this weekend. What am I thinking? Along with, by the way, UCLA, Indiana, Kentucky, North Carolina, Minnesota, Iowa State, Maryland. I can get all of those teams. Syracuse, undefeated in football. Just a weird thing about this year. But I think 5.5 is right. You have to get that's beating Duke and then getting 2 more in conference. That gives you 3 Big 12 wins, which is more than you had in the last 10 years combined, right?
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that would be an impressive step forward. I think it already has been. And listen, there is no unless he goes to Nebraska, there is no reason to think that this will not continue to progress under Lance Leipold. Full stop. He is the dude that's doing this. Any
chance he does end up in Lincoln?
Sure, absolutely. Listen, because Nebraska has to evolve a little bit here, and I think this isn't rocket science. This isn't new content about how the internet has changed Nebraska and how recruiting has changed Nebraska. I think Nebraska has to go about business a little differently than it used to. I don't think fans in Nebraska think that they're going to ever be Tom Osborne, Tommy Frazier again, where they're the best program in the world. I think fans are reasonable about that. But should fans in Nebraska expect, hypothetically, if there are divisions moving forward, which they're probably not going to be, should they expect to win their division and be the best team in the heartland portion of the Big Ten more times than not, considering from a recruiting standpoint, they probably have the best roster, they probably have the biggest dollar donors, they probably have the best facilities, they probably have the best fan base. That's not to say that Iowa and Wisconsin and Minnesota don't have great fans. They do. But Nebraska is sort of the best at all of that stuff of any of those teams. They should still be dominating, but those teams are all developmental programs where they get guys and they develop them into a culture, and I feel like Nebraska has been missing that. And the guys that are around Nebraska, literally within a couple hundred miles, Lance Leipold, Chris Kleiman, and Matt Campbell, who all of which don't know what the future of their conference looks like, which is the most important part of all of this. Sure, Matt Campbell may turn down every single job ever offered to him, and he may love Iowa State more than he loves anything else, and that may be what he decides. But that's not the discussion we're having when we say, is Nebraska a better job? And Nebraska's a better job, not even close. It's a better job. So if Leipold or Kleiman were offered the job, I would assume they would take it. I think Campbell would eventually take it because he would ask for enough stuff, he would get it. They need to be in the development business, not in the glitzy glam, recruiting sales pitch business. They need to be in the development business, and that's what Nebraska needs to do. Then you package into it an NIL world that should be more valuable than anybody in that part of the country because the fan base is so big. Heck, the most famous player on Nebraska's team hasn't even played a down because he's the coldest. That's the whole thing. And so they've got to do it a little differently than they've done in the past. I think fans know that and understand that. I think the administration hopefully understands that. So that's why the Fickle, Kleiman, Leipold, Campbell group of people, because they are developers, are the guys that I'll be looking at. Now, Matt Rule is going to be available in these job searches at some point. I think he's a heck of a college coach. I don't think it's working in the NFL, obviously. I have heard Lane Kiffin's name mentioned around Nebraska, which would be a different strategy to go all offense, to go offensive scheme, and to go sort of a little bit heavier into the transfer portal and NIL, and that maybe that's the opposite of what we just got done talking about. But he's the one that I don't know if Lane would say yes, but if I'm in charge of Nebraska, he's the one SEC coach that I would call because inside of the Big Ten, Nebraska is a higher-ranking program inside their conference and has more upward mobility than I think. I think Ole Miss is kind of topped out where it is in the SEC. I don't know how you can sustain 9 or 10 wins at Ole Miss in the SEC.
Is the students there at Nebraska? They had Urban Meyer T-shirts. I mean, is he part of the conversation?
Oh,
yeah, maybe just
he's a part of the internet conversation that gets started because people listen to podcasts like mine and then make fun of they make jokes and because he's a candidate for every single job,
right?
In theory, but here's the thing about Urban Meyer. First of all, if you want to sell your soul to win a championship, he's your guy. He's a heck of a football coach. I don't want anything to do with him personally. At my alma mater, I would not root for him, but you cannot argue his success. The key with Urban Meyer is that I don't think he comes back for anything other than another championship ring. type of deal, and how many programs are like that, and does Nebraska qualify? And I don't know. I think, if LSU, Florida, Notre Dame, and USC don't get his blood going, then I don't know why Nebraska would.
Would or should, maybe not would, but should Lance Leipold or Chris Kleiman, if we go down this game theory and game it out, and they're offered the job, I don't know what the money would look like, probably substantial, but maybe more substantial than, Lance Leipold's making 2.4. Or 2.2 this year and then 2.4 with the contract that he restructured a couple of weeks ago. Should they take it, Lance Leipold, Chris Kleiman, if they're offered? Should they take the Nebraska job?
Yeah. I don't know why again, personal, like I always say this, you never know what makes an individual tick.
Right.
And so an individual like Gary Anderson, famous for those that don't know, Gary Anderson was on the West Coast, Utah State, doing a good job, takes the Wisconsin job, and after 2 years just decides to leave and go back to the West Coast for a lesser job. Doesn't make any sense, but you never know what makes a guy tick, right? Your family wants to live in a certain area. Your kids like this. You love that climate. You don't want to live in this area. Like Mike Leach loves working at Outposts. He lives in Lubbock, Pullman, and Starkville. That's the middle of nowhere because that's what Mike Leach likes. So you never know what an individual like you're thinking. I would assume Lance Leipold would take the job. Chris Kleiman's a little bit more complicated. I don't know if he would take it or not. Matt Campbell's the biggest wild card, but if I'm Lance Leipold, I would take the job in 2 seconds. Again, and it's not about money. Kansas can pay. Kansas could pay whatever. Vanderbilt can pay. Any of these schools can pay. If you again, look at what Matt Campbell has sort of milked out of Iowa State. He's getting more money for assistants. They're building things. He's getting paid handsomely. And if you're comfortable with sort of, listen, somebody made a promise to me. I'm making a promise back to them. I'm going to stick with that. I got nothing but respect for that, completely. And you hate to know that you've built all this up in 2 years in Kansas and you've done the job and you came in late and it was a weird situation and they believed in you and they gave you the chance and now you're going to go take the hot new job. But how do you – again, this is football. We're not talking about basketball. How do you turn down Nebraska football to stay at Kansas? That's not meant to be disrespectful. That just doesn't make any sense logically. Just like it wouldn't make any sense for a Nebraska basketball coach to stay at Nebraska if offered the Kansas job. It doesn't make any sense. Now, again, he may have some personal reasons that he wants to do that, and that's totally fine. But the vast majority of us, 99% of us, are leaving Kansas, the worst job in the Big 12 for the last 15 years, to take one of the premier, top 20 jobs in the history of the sport. There's no logic to saying no to that job. And so I don't think anybody should fault him. People that he's individually promised things to, sure, you can maybe say, man, you told us you were going to be here. But also, you know what? As I'm teaching my 5-year-old daughter, life ain't fair. And sometimes sometimes that's the way it works. I think it would be, I think it would be insanity not to take the job if I was Lance Leipold.
Even if he goes there, one of the things that Lance Leipold has already done, and there's 9 games left, and we'll see maybe they finish 3-9. I doubt they do, but 9 games remaining. At least Lance Leipold has created a scenario to where, if they were to have to go out on the coaching search, Travis Goff, at least he's shown that, it can happen. You can go down to Houston at KU and win. You can go to West Virginia at KU and win and be the better team and dominate the second half against Houston and win those games and be almost a double-digit favorite against Duke, an undefeated team at home. It's now down to, a touchdown or something like that for KU. But it's possible to have happen where Lance Leipold could only envision that without having something tangible since Mark Mangino to be able to say, yeah, you can do that at Kansas, when probably everybody told Lance Leipold, what the hell are you doing? Why would you take that job? And I know you've been passed over a couple of years, but you don't take that job just to take the job. You got a good thing going there in Buffalo. Keep going, and then you'll get a really good job. Why take Kansas? And, year and 3 games later, they're undefeated. They're getting votes in the AP poll, and they've got a phenomenal quarterback, and they don't commit penalties or turn the football over.
Yeah. Guess what, guys? He's a really good coach.
Oh,
I think
okay.
I've been saying that for 2 years.
What?
No, listen, I don't you take the job because Buffalo is one of the toughest places to win in America. To me, Kansas a Power 5 job at the time, and it still kind of is. I think it's a no-brainer to go from Buffalo to Kansas, and again, relative to where Kansas was. But I think you're absolutely right with your point, which is Kansas in better off shape today than they were 18, 20, 24 months ago? And the answer is obviously yes. And so does that mean that Kansas has a better chance of going out and hiring a better candidate? The answer is yes. So I think that is – you don't want to get that lost in the conversation. Does any of this mean that Lance Leipold wants the job? Does he want to stay in Lawrence? Does he like Lawrence better? Maybe he does. I don't know. But like that's a different question than should normally the Kansas coach take the Nebraska job. And I think there are normally the Kentucky coach would take the Nebraska job because normally Nebraska is a significantly better football job than Kentucky. Now, in Mark Stoops' individual situation, he's an Ohio guy he's from right across the river, who's recruiting very well in Ohio. He's an Iowa grad who probably wants to wait for Kirk Ferentz to retire if he's going to do that. And then you look at what he's done. Like, why would he go to Kentucky where Kentucky was when he got there? Like, that's what Nebraska is right now. Nebraska is 2013 Kentucky. So why would he go back to that and redo all of it when you've got it rolling right now at Kentucky for basically the same amount of money in equally prestigious conference, if not a more prestigious conference? And his team he's solving all the problems he had over the first 5 years. He's got a quarterback now. He's evolved the offense, and there's a chance that if they can beat Tennessee and Neyland, that team's playing for a division title against Georgia later this year. So, again, that's why nobody in the SEC, if I'm an SEC fan, I wouldn't be concerned about anybody other than maybe Lane Kiffin. He's the one name that would maybe make sense to go there because, again, who's leaving SEC money and stability and financial future? Who leaves a Big Ten school now for a job in the Pac-12 or the ACC or the Big 12 because they're just not – the way the game has changed in the last 13, 14 months with the Texas OU, USC, UCLA expansion thing, it just changes. I would assume it would change the way you look at your future. And a job in the Big Ten at a premier program like Nebraska, even if expectations don't necessarily match what they should be, it's still hard to look at that. Like, if Matt Campbell, if it comes out that Matt Campbell's offered the Nebraska job and he's offered a bunch of money and he says, no, I'm going to stay in Iowa State, like I would pay any amount of money to do a 1 hour sit down with Matt Campbell to understand why.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's wrong. I just want to, there's a human element there that he says no to Nebraska. And I'd be like, I want to go why? Why would you say no? And let's talk through it because that's whatever answer you got is going to be very interesting.
Well, I know that Braden Gall's our guest. I know that KU fans probably don't want Lance Leipold's name in there being a chance of him leaving to go to Nebraska. You don't want that, but it's a good thing, and not just it's a good thing if people talk about your coach because you're doing well. It's a good thing because, Travis Goff has already recognized what Lance Leipold can do because they already, restructured his contract, extended his contract. He's getting more money this year. He's going to be paid over $3 million, $3.5 million, 5 years from now. That can certainly increase. But what it does is if Nebraska's even surfacely interested in Lance Leipold, it forces Travis Goff's hand to where Lance Leipold can go to Travis Goff and say, okay, I want to increase the budget for assistant coaches. I want to invest a little bit more money over here. And now Kansas becomes a better football program overall because they've got a guy who can do it, who can coach, and has then the clout to demand a raise and to open up the purse strings so you can retain some of these assistant coaches and you become a better program for it just because Nebraska is interested, whether or not you get down the road and it's, Nebraska is trying to sign you. Even if that's the case, Travis Goff's going to have to do something to make sure that his coach doesn't leave for Nebraska, less than 24 months after they hire him.
Well, and it also, it sort of builds on itself too, right? And I talked to James Franklin a lot about this when he was here in Nashville at Vanderbilt. I mean, it's if you're doing something right at Vanderbilt, then you're going to have your coaching staff poached, and your name is going to come up for other jobs. And that is just that's just part of doing your job at a program like Vanderbilt, which is why when you look at college football, and not talking about the elite programs, but it's why when you look at college football, the guys who had the when you find your guy at I don't want to say a middle-class program, but when you find Kirk Ferentz, when you find Barry Alvarez, when you find Frank Beamer, when you find Gary Patterson, even though obviously they had to move on recently, that was a long run there at TCU. Mm-hmm. When you find your guy that sort of is like Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern, obviously being alumni helps. When you find that guy and you just are patient with them and you invest in them and you let them do your thing, there is a lot to be said for not chasing the national championship because I'm just that aspirational as a coach. Like, there's a lot. This is why I'm fascinated by Matt Campbell, because in theory, he's like 1/3 of his way through the Kirk Ferentz experiment, right? And that like, if he wanted to become Kirk Ferentz at Iowa State, he could do it. Because I don't think he's ever going to not learn how to or forget how to coach. I don't think his teams are ever going to not be quality. The question is he okay becoming like the guy in the history of Iowa State football and having a statue built outside of himself and making a bunch of money, but like maybe never making the playoff, maybe never competing for a national championship? Or does he put his head down on a pillow at night and dream about beating Alabama in the national title? I know for a fact that James Franklin puts his head down on a pillow every night and dreams about playing in front of 100,000 people and winning national championships. That was his goal as a career individual. Not everybody's like that. Mark Stoops is fine at Kentucky. Barry Alvarez was fine at Wisconsin. Kirk Ferentz is fine at Iowa. You can find your guy, and if you can't, it's hard to do. It's very hard to do. Invest in them, and then what that does is it shows every other coach that the program is willing to commit, resources, time, and energy, that the fans can show up when they're good, and that there is value to be had living in this Ames, Iowa bubble, let's call it, right? Like, I'm just using him as an example because I'm fascinated by his sort of progression here. Like, clearly he's a very good coach. Clearly Iowa State would do everything in their power to keep him. Are they able to do that long term? And this goes to Kleiman and Leipold and Fickle at Cincinnati and Sataki at BYU. Like, there's a lot of – I think Aranda at Baylor's another one. Like, if you find your guy and you can somehow keep them there for 15 or 20 years, you can have a pretty dang good football program. Does it mean you're going to win championships in those places? No. Those are not places you can – like, I think you can win Big 12 titles. I think you can win Big 10 titles. I don't know if I really like this Baylor team. I don't think they can make the playoff this year. So now in an expanded playoff, does that change the way coaches see all of this stuff I just mentioned?
Yeah.
Maybe it does.
Yeah, right.
Maybe it does, because then maybe Iowa State can get into the playoff, and maybe that does change his calculus.
Visiting with Braden Gall. The couple of other schools real quick, and then we'll get you out of here. K-State, Tulane. I looked past what could be your traditional trap game because I didn't think K-State would be susceptible to that or fall into that. But they get a big win against a former rival, and they go 1-0 in the Big 8, and then they're getting ready for Oklahoma the next week. And Tulane comes in, and they're 2 touchdown favorites against them. And they just didn't have it on that game. And I don't want to take anything away from Tulane, but 3 of 20 on 3rd and 4th down for K-State is just unacceptable for a Chris Kleiman team that can run the ball, can move the ball, can do some of those things. And you've got playmakers. So what happened in that game against Tulane? Is it just a traditional trap game? They were thinking about Oklahoma, or is there something more concerning about K-State in that game?
This is probably going to lessen the blow a little bit for Kansas State fans, and I don't know if they like that or not, but it does. It's not even just a trap game. It's like the perfect storm of everything mixed together to create the upset, because it's not just that it's a trap game. It's a trap game against a really well-coached team. It's not just a trap game. It's a trap game where your quarterback reverts back to his old self, making silly mistakes. And it's a trap game in that you go for it on 4th down a bunch of times, and you love the risk, and I appreciate that. I enjoy that, and it just doesn't work, and the odds don't break in your favor when 4th downs are normally in that 40-45% range. Even though you sometimes played it too conservatively, right? Like punting in certain situations that maybe you shouldn't. So it's sort of like that perfect storm of we came off a big win against an old rival. We've going into a huge game. So there's look ahead, there's letdown, there's high-quality coached opponent with a veteran quarterback. Like, you kind of put it all, it's everything packaged together. And, yeah, I mean, if you go, what was it, 2 of 15 on 3rd down and 1 of 5 on 4th down, if you do that, there's not many teams. Like, good football teams can beat you when you do that. And the defense wasn't the problem. The running game and the offense and the quarterback wasn't a problem. I know Kleiman talked after the game how he needs Adrian Martinez to stop thinking, basically, I'm paraphrasing, and just let it rip. And, that, again, for those that did not watch him at Nebraska, that is the Adrian Martinez experiment right there. Like, he wasn't exactly efficient against Missouri. They just got by. And so I think that's the problem is you had your quarterback revert back to some old tendencies. Again, you package it with a really well-coached opponent. Tulane's a good team, man. Like, that Willie Fritz is a good coach. That is a guy that's been mentioned for Power 5 jobs for years now. and they've got a veteran quarterback. And so they weren't scared, and you package that with coming off a big win, going into a huge game. Listen, I thought Kansas State would win. I thought they would win easily. I lost money on Kansas State, so I am giving credit where credit is due here. I think it's the combination of all factors that form this perfect storm. And at some point, you just got to tip your cap and say, look, they went for it on 4th and 2 or whatever it was. Gutsy call. They got it. Or 4th and inches. They got it. And our guys couldn't convert. And sometimes that's how sports goes. And you got to just give credit sometimes.
K-State, Oklahoma, plus 13. What do you think of the game? Who do you like in that one?
It's funny. I thought Nebraska would play with some extra motivation last week. Certainly Vegas thought that, with the point spread being about the same. I think it was 11 points. Mm-hmm. And what struck me, the two things that struck me, one on to a lesser extent, is that Brent Venables has done some pretty good work with that defensive front. He picked up where Alec Grinch left off, and has done a good job kind of continuing to create some talent along the defensive line. They're doing different stuff. They're being creative, and they're getting after people. But really what was fascinating is how much in control Dylan Gabriel was of the offense. And when Jeff Lebby would call it, again, the double pass is just a thing of beauty. That was maestro Beethoven level symphony football, because even the design was kind of interesting and a little different than your normal double halfback pass kind of deal. And they just did it so perfectly that you're like, that's literally every part of that was executed exactly how we drew it up. And so to see how much and how quickly you're starting to see some of those people influence the team, I think is interesting. That would concern me if I'm a Kansas State fan, because right now they're coming off playing a Power 5 opponent, playing as well as possible. They're going to have a ton of confidence. So that whole physicality, gap control, super disciplined Kansas State culture is going to have to come out and overachieve, because I think Oklahoma right now is playing as well as anybody. But we'll find out. I wouldn't touch that one from a gambling perspective, but I am much more interested in Oklahoma right now than I was 3 weeks ago with how in control they seem.
Outside of the last one for you, outside of the local fans, I don't think anybody SEC-wise is going to be interested in Mizzou and Auburn, other than maybe Auburn fans rooting for Mizzou to win, so they can move on from there'll be Mizzou and Auburn fans rooting for the same team in that one. Auburn's favored by 7. They're just not as talented of an Auburn team as you're used to. What happens in this one? And I mean, just. I don't really even know what to make of this, because over the last couple of weeks I've kind of lost a decent amount of confidence in what Mizzou can do this year.
No, this is the beauty of Auburn football. You don't have to know what to make of any of it to enjoy it. You just get to enjoy it. Now, listen, he was fired long before the Penn State debacle. He was not going to be the head coach next year at Auburn. It may be accelerating the process, especially if Missouri beats you this weekend, which is totally possible, because, again, the one thing that Auburn was supposed to be good at and has NFL players at those positions is their defensive front, and they just got manhandled, completely destroyed at the point of attack by Penn State. Penn State deserves a lot of credit for that, but that's also a team that has quit. In my opinion, defensively, there's no way you should allow that Penn State offense, who's had major offensive line problems, can't run the football, quarterback's been on and off for the better part of 6 years. You can't let them come down there and be that efficient on your home field. You got to have some pride about you. So I would not be surprised by anything. You don't have to know anything about anything to think that Missouri could just absolutely hammer them and end this whole thing and put Brian Harsin out of his misery so he can move and take the Arizona State job. I just think that the writing's not even on the wall. It's literally on the contract at this point. So I don't know what we're It's fun to tune in to watch these kinds of things, because you kind of know anything could happen, and I would not be surprised at a 3-touchdown Missouri victory to drive the final nail into the coffin.
Yeah, I said I think yesterday that if I'm either not betting it or I'm betting Missouri money line. I'm not going to go with the 7. Either they lose by a couple touchdowns or they just run away.
Yes, and if you're Missouri and you're Eli, oh my God, do you take it? You don't. It doesn't matter 2 years from now, 3 years from now. You go, look, we beat Auburn. Mm-hmm. We're good enough to beat Auburn. That's all you got to say. It doesn't. You don't have to put any context around it when you're talking to your bosses and you're Eli Drinkowitz. In a couple of years, you take that W over a prestigious program like that, and you run to town.
Braden Gall is our guest. Braden, you're the man, as always. I really appreciate the time. Love the perspective and the conversation. Enjoy the football, and already looking forward to our conversation next week. Thanks, man, as always.
Yep, always a pleasure.
Absolutely. There's Braden Gall, man. He's so good. Love talking college football with Braden. 440 Podcast Network that he runs, but also ESPN Radio, College Game Day. You hear him on Saturdays. He's with Athlon Sports as well. He hosts the Fringe Element podcast, a football show podcast. So all over college football is Braden Gall, and fun conversation there just in coaching and job openings, and the fact that we are talking about the Kansas head coach and should he take the Nebraska job if offered? Nebraska Kearney? Like UNO? Like which Nebraska job are you talking about? Yeah, what a strange turn of events that has taken place over the last couple of years when 2 years ago it was Les Miles barreling towards an 0-9 season. And who knew where any brightness was there a light at the end of any tunnel? I mean, it was just it was a tunnel encased in concrete on both sides. There was just darkness, and now Lance Leipold has broken through that. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
I've got control of all these knobs over here.
Wow.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco, Beards. We appreciate those that are listening, hanging around. If you're in your car right now and you can't hear us, turn on the stream or the video. If you're in your car, don't do the video. Yeah. But if you're not able to hear us on the radio, you should turn us on the stream or the video. What's that? Oh, they couldn't hear us say that. Okay, great. But if you're listening on the stream or watching on the video, then keep it locked right here.
However you're listening to the show right now, whatever works for you, it's just good to keep in mind that there are lots of ways you can consume this show. That's often, the vast majority of the time, 8:10 a.m. on your radio dial.
That's right.
Number one in your heart. 810 mobile app, 810WHB.com. And then the video streams, that put us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. There's probably a way you could get us on your smart refrigerator if you have one of those.
U-Book.
I almost said one that would have definitely been an okay joke to make if we definitely were not under the umbrella of FCC violations.
We aren't right now.
I just decided I was about to go for it.
I don't know about the Twitch, right? But I know when on the stream we could say whatever we want. So much more room for activities here now. I mean, we got space to really stretch our legs out, and let's have some. You know what? Sad fans from Reddit, Beards.
Uncensored. Let's do it. Let's do the raw, uncut version, Beards. Let's go.
We are online, and there's no issue on the internet. Do whatever you want.
I don't want to play Russian roulette with this, you guys.
This is my concern.
In the middle of it, it comes back on the air.
Right, exactly.
Is that, as soon as I'm about to drop a real chunky F-bomb, the Drake will turn what I imagine is a comically large lever at the transmitter. Like he will grab it with the entire force of his body and just chunk. And as soon as it chunks back, that's when I'll hit the the back end of my mother effer or whatever.
It's like picking up Thor's hammer. Just
yes.
Oh, come on, Paul! We're almost there!
The transmitter is the Drake's Mjolnir.
I don't know what that means.
That's Thor's hammer.
Oh. Cool.
It's named Mjolnir. I tried to make somebody spell it. Yeah. I tried to make somebody spell it a couple weeks ago.
I think we just need 1.21 gigawatts. And then we'll be good to go. We're back on the air.
I think that is. You know what, Jason? I understood that reference.
Oh my God! It's a Christmas miracle.
I don't mean to brag, everyone, but
God bless us, everyone.
I got that one. Just 2 in a row. That's 2 in a row.
Oh, what was the other one?
Back to the Future and Christmas Carol.
Oh, I was like, what was the other one that you got a reference? I was thinking that the Back to the Future was the second of said 2 in a row.
No, you snuck in another one that I'm technically going to try to take credit for.
There you go. All right, so thank you to Braden Gall, who was really good for those of you that heard it.
Oh, you know what I also should say? Actually, legitimately, I don't know if we plug this nearly enough. Every syllable that gets spoken on this show. Jason has got really bad pen control today. We can come back to that as well.
I have a Band-Aid on my finger. I sliced my finger.
I was going to ask about this.
And I've got a Band-Aid on it, and so it's hard to keep control of the pen. I like to play with the pen while I'm talking and twist it.
Fidgeter.
And,
man.
And as I was talking to Adam Teicher, I like moved the pin, and it flew out of my hand, and it flew across the room, and it just looked like I was throwing the pin. But I'm like, I have no idea how that happened. But I've only dropped it like 4 or 5 times today.
I have literally done the fidgeting with the pin. It flies across the room things. When I saw that happen to you, I saw the Band-Aid, and I was like, I knew exactly what happened.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, everything we say on this show, like this great bit right here, we do podcast. You can just search for The Zone.
That's great.
Or Zone 810 or whatever. Just search for The Zone wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of those places, it's there. I use a third-party app. It's on that one. And frankly, if there's any podcasting app that you use that does not have The Zone on it, let me know, and I can get that fixed pretty easily, I imagine. So you should listen to the show that way, just in case there's ever like a 20-minute chunk that you're not able to hear for some reason.
So we just talked to Braden Gall, and we talked about coaches and Lance Leipold, Chris Kleiman, Matt Campbell, Fickell, the names that might be talked about with Nebraska's job. Bruce Feldman has written at The Athletic. Have you seen this, Josh?
I have.
Okay.
I love this list.
So Bruce Feldman at The Athletic has said that after more than a week of the job being open, sources tell The Athletic there are 3 leading candidates on top of Nebraska's wish list. Lance Leipold, Kansas head coach. He writes, how about a candidate with Cornhusker roots and strong ties around the state? He was a Nebraska assistant from 2001 to 2003, sandwiched around a decade at Nebraska Omaha. That was before Leipold got his first head coaching job. At Wisconsin Whitewater, he built a powerhouse, winning 6 Division III national titles, going 109-6. From there, he went to Buffalo, elevated the program, top 25. By the time he left, he should have been hired away sooner. 80s were hesitant, perhaps because of his small school history. Vanderbilt was impressed with him 2 years ago, but hired alum Clark Lee. Kansas hired Leipold. They've proven that that's very smart. He inherited a huge mess. 3-0. His teams play
in there.
Yeah. His teams play very hard, are well organized, and always prepared. This guy wins everywhere. Leipold's buyout at Kansas is only $5 million. It drops to $4 million in mid-December. In any event, that's very manageable for Nebraska, especially. And this is my parentheses, my add-on of saying that, especially when they spent $7.5 million for, as Josh called it, expedited shipping for the firing. The $5/4 million will not be an issue.
Unbelievable.
Next up, Matt Campbell, Iowa State head coach. Campbell's been a hot name for years. Yeah, I mean, Matt Campbell's name has been talked about of taking a next head coaching job since World War II. I think that was when the first one came up. Like, are they going to hire him at Fordham? Is Matt Campbell going to take the Furman head coaching job? Can he replace the 7 blocks of granite and keep this offense literally running? I don't know. Anyway, 42-year-old, he's only 42. I'm 42.
It's incredible. He's been doing. He was actually suggested to be the replacement for Bo Pelini, I think.
Isn't that weird?
So that seems crazy.
How is he only 42 years old? The Ohio native has been the best thing to happen to Iowa State football. He led Cyclones to top 10 season, talks about different players, Purdy,
was
Breece
connected
Hall.
to the program after Tom Osborne. And
That's right.
Well, that doesn't seem right.
Matt Campbell was very high on USC's radar last year before Lincoln Riley took the job. Would he leave for Lincoln? It's not a given. Campbell has been very choosy. Another factor here, Nebraska wants to be very aggressive in the NIL space and has already been evidenced by the way the Cornhuskers landed, I think, the coldest. They list the first name, but I think it's the coldest for Nebraska. So the transfer to Campbell and Iowa State, or maybe it's another one of them. Campbell and Iowa State haven't been as aggressive on that front, but have been steadfast in their development model. Okay, so that's interesting. They want to be on the forefront of NIL, and Matt Campbell apparently hasn't been on the forefront. Bill O'Brien, Alabama offensive coordinator from the Nick Saban School of Rebrand Your Football Coaching PR.
This has to be it. I know that the KU angle on this is what's important locally. I just want it to be Bill O'Brien.
O'Brien and Trev Alberts have a connection dating back to O'Brien's days as an assistant at Georgia Tech. We hear Alberts has great admiration for the rebuilding job O'Brien did at Penn State. O'Brien did outstanding work stabilizing Penn State, going 15-9 in 2 seasons before returning to the NFL. Alberts knows Nebraska doesn't have the same problems Penn State did, but it's a program that needs a major overhaul. O'Brien displayed real leadership when he arrived in Happy Valley and helped build the foundation for a turnaround. It also didn't hurt that since returning from the NFL, O'Brien, under a few seasons with Nick Saban, helped groom a Heisman-winning quarterback in Bryce Young, playing a key role with an Alabama team strong national title contender. Next up, Chris Kleiman.
Oh, I only saw the list go 3 deep.
It is... He said there are top 3, and then he starts listing others. Says Chris Kleiman, Kansas State head coach. Another option with similar low division roots and a bunch of rings is Kansas State's Chris Kleiman. He won 4 national titles at North Dakota State. He's had 2 8-win seasons since coming to K-State in 2019. This year's team looks like it should be a contender for the Big 12 title. He's 54 in a good situation working with his old Indy SU AD Gene Taylor. I think that last part is maybe why he's not a top 3 candidate, as why he's here are a list of other candidates Nebraska could be interested in, whereas sources have told him there are 3 coaches they have zeroed in on. Lance Leipold, Matt Campbell, and Bill O'Brien.
Do you think you think Kleiman could get Adrian Martinez a transfer? I feel like he'd be good there.
I get the joke. But let me offer a different route if you're Nebraska.
He's got another year of eligibility, right?
Mm-hmm. Let me offer a different route for Nebraska.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare. Don't do this. No, don't do this to Kansas. Are you about to do this to Kansas? Don't do... No, Jason, don't. No, Jason. Jason, no. Jason, you don't have to do this, man. No, come on, man. Don't do this, Jason.
Package deal, Leipold and Jalen Daniels to Nebraska.
For what? Like for the state of Nebraska itself?
Player, coach to be named later and player to be named later. It made me think when you mentioned Adrian Martinez, the immediate thing that popped in my head was, does Jalen Daniels follow Lance Leipold to Nebraska to play football there as opposed to staying at... You want to talk about legitimately being given a chance to win a national to win a Heisman Trophy? It'd be at Nebraska.
Since you're a Mizzou guy, that Lance Leipold and Jalen Daniels is probably the second best case scenario, just behind Eli Drinkwitz and Brady Cook going to Nebraska.
As long as not Sam Horn, because apparently he's going to be really good. God, I hope. But here's the thing about Leipold, and I know that there are plenty of KU fans that say that he wouldn't take the Nebraska job. I understand it. I know it. He wouldn't take the Nebraska job. Why would he take the Nebraska job? Because he spent 13 years in Nebraska. 13 years of his coaching tenure was in Nebraska. He was at Omaha from 94 to 2000. He was in Lincoln from 2001 to 2003. And then he was back in Omaha from 2004 to 2006, before then getting the head coaching job at Wisconsin Whitewater. He spent 13 years in Nebraska, in Omaha and Lincoln. This isn't a guy that's California or is East Coast or something like that. It's like, yeah, he's at Kansas now, but then if he's going to take a bigger job, it's not going to be in Lincoln, Nebraska, okay? He knows the state. He spent 13 years there. So if there is somebody in that mix, they talked about Bill O'Brien and Trev Alberts having the relationship before at Penn State. Lance Leipold has a relationship with Nebraska. He's from Wisconsin. He was successful in Wisconsin. A Midwestern guy. The money is going to be right. And if he's their number one guy, if they zero in on Lance Leipold, and they got the crosshairs, and Lance Leipold is our guy, go get your guy, Kansas won't be able to match. It will be, could Kansas match in other ways in terms of here's how close we can get, but you're also still here in Lawrence where we gave you the chance, and so there's the loyalty here. We'll give you this much more money when it comes to the assistant coaches. We'll invest this much more with NIL, whatever it might be, programs here at the university, more money into the football facilities. This contract, we'll pay you all this money. We'll give you, more years. But if Nebraska comes in and was like, hey, we're going to give you a 6-year deal worth $45 million.
This has to be such a confusing time for Kansas football fans because you have just done so quickly the absolute breakneck thing of laughingstock, disappointment, laughingstock, reboot. God, what are we doing? Wait, hold on, no, you got too good too fast. We are too respected too quickly. This team's getting top 25 votes. And now all of a sudden, everyone's looking at Kansas football and saying, oh yeah, the guy at the helm of that program, maybe he could also turn around Nebraska. I thought what Braden said last segment was really interesting, saying, look, whatever path you would take to say 10 years in the future, maybe KU basketball has been underperforming for a decade by this time, but if Nebraska ball gets turned around, produces for a season, and then KU all of a sudden is looking for a new head coach, everyone on the planet would say, well, yeah, you got to leave Nebraska basketball to go be the new head coach at Allen Fieldhouse. I mean, that's just a move that everybody makes. I think that is a tough pill to swallow right now if you're a KU fan who's saying, wait a second, our team head-to-head right now, the health of our program in Lawrence is better than the health of Nebraska football in its current state. Why would you go take the more diseased job? Well, he did that to come to Lawrence. I mean, he did that leaving Buffalo in a place where he had made it undeniable to come to Lawrence to turn this team around. Now, the thing that also Braden touched on that I'd be very curious to learn about, and we will learn more about this over the weeks and months to come, I'm sure, maybe very definitively. Did Lance Leipold get a setup at Kansas where he said, hey, man, look, they come offer me the Oklahoma job. They come offer me the Alabama job. And that might be an exaggeration. They come offer me a very, very good job, one better than Nebraska in 2022. But I really want to make sure, I want to build this to something impressive. And then eventually, maybe I will go get one of the top SEC gigs or something like that. Or is his plan going to be make this program respectable, get on to the next one? He's got a lot better chance. If he turns Nebraska around, he gets whatever job he wants after that, if he wants to leave Nebraska. Maybe Nebraska's a destination. Not a lot of football coaches have made Lawrence, Kansas their final destination, by choice, at least. Several coaches have by default, by firing and then not getting another head job anywhere else. That is a very interesting spot to find Lance Leipold in, and I think it's also a little more tumultuous for Kansas because it's not like he's been here making excellent program DNA throughout the organization for years now. Like, I don't think that they went into this year with a succession plan in mind, in all likelihood. So this could be kind of scary for Travis Goff.
So what I love about this conversation, and I love it so much, it warms my heart, not from the perspective you're thinking, okay?
Okay.
It warms my heart from this angle. There is a very known conversation argument that's been had over the last year or so with me, Corey, Mick, other analysts and things like that about Eli Drinkwitz. Mm-hmm. It started from a fact or fiction question.
Excellent.
Fact or fiction is what Corey asked us at the beginning of last year's football season. Said fact or fiction, at the end of the 2022 football season, Eli Drinkwitz, or the beginning of the 23 football season, Eli Drinkwitz will still be the head coach at Mizzou. And I said fiction. Everybody else said fact. And I said, well, why? What job is he going to take? And the answer was tons of jobs he would take. Mm. And my point was, name one. Mm-hmm. Name the job that he would. Alabama. Alabama's not coming open. Name another one. Will he take the Florida job? They're hiring Billy Napier. Well, he would take this job. Right. Name the job that would, one, come open, two, he would have to be that successful over the next 2 years that they would then land on him and say, you're the guy, and three, he would say, I've been successful in 3 years at Mizzou, that I'm definitely going to leave here and go take that job. That was my point. That was the whole point. And then it started to devolve because people wanted to then straw man and try to make me chase the stick off the porch, which I tend to do in these things because I don't like to be misrepresented in what I'm saying. And then it became okay, you think Mizzou's a better program than Georgia? No, I didn't say that. You think Mizzou's a better football program than Arkansas? You think they're... No, I didn't say that. But there have been better football programs than Iowa State that have offered Matt Campbell, and he has not left. What I love about this so much are the amount of people that probably called me a homer for saying that it's not a guarantee that Eli Drinkwitz would just leave for any job, that are now saying, Lance Leipold ain't going to take the Nebraska job. Why would Lance Leipold take Nebraska? Nebraska job? No way he would take the Nebraska job. Oh, but you're a homer for saying that Eli's not just going to automatically leave no matter what if he's had some success. Well, yeah, because you're a homer. But look at Nebraska versus Kansas. He's not going to take the Nebraska job. Oh, I love it so much because I would love to see the Venn diagram of those that would say, of course Eli would just leave, you idiot, versus, well, I don't know. Let's actually look at the details of Leipold at Kansas versus Nebraska. Because why are we stopping and looking at the details of Leipold in Nebraska specifically when we didn't want to do that at all a year ago? We just wanted to say, well, Eli would leave Mizzou for whatever job. Well, let's look at a detailed job. Doesn't matter. Name a job. He's gone. Okay, Lance Leipold leaving Kansas for Nebraska. Well, let's assess this specifically and really get down to the nitty-gritty and the nuts and bolts of the whole thing to see if he would leave. It warms my heart, the Venn diagram of people that are right in the middle of, he's not leaving for Nebraska. Jason, how could you possibly say that Eli Drinkwitz wouldn't have success in 2 years and then take any job?
Yeah,
I love it. I love it so much.
I think that we've learned enough now in college, and maybe this is even more about like trusting.
This is me sipping my tea, by the way.
Have some tea. Have a nice little slurp of tea. I think
it's
we've
really
learned
coffee.
I think we've learned enough at this point, or at least you would think that the coaches making these decisions for themselves would have learned enough at this point to know that the situation matters. That the support system matters, your AD matters, the roster in its current state matters, expectations, NIL. Like there are just a lot of factors at play there where, yeah, I mean, you know, like if Florida would have come to Drinkwitz and said, hey, let us show you our plan. Well, there's a recruiting pitch to be made to the coaches here now. Like, you need to say, hey, we're going to upgrade your situation.
Because the money is great wherever you go.
Yeah.
Missouri outbid Arkansas for Eli Drinkwitz. They were willing to pay because they're bringing in tons of money with the SEC network. It's no longer Mizzou's not going to pay for a head coach and Florida's coming calling or Tennessee's coming and calling. You freaking leave.
Right.
Because they're going to pay you. They're going to double your salary and Mizzou won't match.
But that's the question. If it's going to be monetary, it has to be by a degree of magnitude, right?
Yeah.
It's not worth moving across the country for a program you're not excited about for a raise that would mean a lot of money to most people and not that much money on the grand scheme of college head coaches. And I do not know if Lance Leipold is thrilled to bits with the state of the KU program. He signed a 1-year extension right before this season began, which also is funny. Just keep that in mind whenever we talk about transfer portals and whatnot. Lance Leipold is 3 games into this season. We are shipping him to the Cornhusker State.
But he signed a 1-year extension, but it gave him a raise. So that's the way you give him a raise.
Absolutely.
We'll put 1 year on the contract, and we're going to give you more money along the way because you've earned it, you deserve it, and it's a preemptive strike of the loyalty we're showing you.
Yes, right. It's all the posturing of all of that, and security, and negotiating against yourself, and negotiating against jobs that may or may not come open.
Because as an aside, and I'll let you get back to the point, but it sparked something in my mind there. We
can't let that go to waste.
I know.
It's so rare.
There. The neurons are firing right now.
Please get some sticks in there. Let's see if we can get this into a little fire.
Can I get some kindling over here?
Somebody, come on, quick.
Any AD worth his salary, if you're Travis Goff, you've got to know the landscape, and you've got to think in the back of your mind, if Nebraska struggles, Scott Frost is out. Would they come calling for Lance Leipold? Well, he spent 13 years in Nebraska. So Why don't we go ahead and tell him we're loyal right now? Why don't we go, Lance, we're going to give you a raise from what you did. This is how much we believe in you, what we believe in the football program, what we believe can take place here in Lawrence with you at the helm. Here's an extension already based on only, 1 year of football, less than that, a couple of wins, and coming close in a couple of games. We believe in you. Boom, here's your contract extension already. If you're reading the tea leaves around the country and going, what jobs could open up that he would leave for? Okay, well, he spent 13 years in Nebraska. He's, from Wisconsin, so he's around that area. Scott Frost could be a few games and few losses away from being fired. Let me go ahead and get ahead of this thing.
One thing that I genuinely do not know the answer to is when Nebraska is going to feel like they need to make a decision across the board here, because a lot of times, these coaching searches will stretch on forever, and they obviously are very invested in getting the right call made here. But usually the jobs that are this high profile don't open up in early September. Like this is a strange timing where Herm Edwards, you talk about getting fired and leaving a program under the microscope of a whole bunch of NCAA investigations, and also that team stinks. This is a sort of interesting time. I don't know if there's a similar example from recent years that could be comparable enough to make some sense out of it. But the one thing that I really, just for everyone's sake, hope doesn't happen is I hope this doesn't hang over Kansas during what should be a really exciting stretch to figure out what this program actually is. I don't know how patient Nebraska is going to be. I don't know how many options they have right now, and I don't, obviously none of us really know kind of where Lance Leipold's head's at and what he's looking for.
I would say that the timeline for making a hire would be roughly November 27th. That would be the timeline for Nebraska to make a hire. Because that's the last day of the regular season for these Power 5 teams, Saturday, November 26th. Then a lot of coaches end up getting fired, or probably before that. But if Nebraska has spent this season picking out the coach they want, as soon as the season is over, that coach is introduced, because that gives you a little less than a month to the early signing period of December 21st of 2022. So you've got a little less than a month, because that's the most important part, is you're not going to wait around and twiddle your thumbs and try to figure out, who you're going to get. You get an early start, because as soon as the final game is over in the regular season of some of these Power 5 coaches, that guy's introduced the next day. And you might even be able to have somebody out, letting some of the recruits know, hey, this guy's the next head coach. I mean, that would be difficult, because you don't want that to come out while your team's playing games. Like if you're Chris Kleiman, Lance Leipold, Matt Campbell, something like that.
And it's different if you're Bill O'Brien, right? In one of those assistant roles, maybe you get a little jump start there. I don't know. Because if Alabama's going to continue playing football in the postseason, seems likely.
Well, because we've seen that with recruiting while also coaching as an assistant.
Right.
I mean,
it would be very impossible to do that as a head coach, I would think. There's probably some weird example of something like that happening, but it seems not ideal.
Well, I mean, Dan Lanning was the defensive coordinator at Georgia. They're playing in the playoff and the national championship game, and he's the head coach at Oregon.
Yeah.
And he's recruiting for Oregon while coaching for Georgia. That's an assistant coach. Bill O'Brien could do that. Leipold, Kleiman, Campbell, they're not doing that.
Yeah.
They're not doing those things.
College football is messy. We should talk about that more.
It is. But December 21st is a big deal for colleges that are looking for coaches, because that's the early signing period. And then on into February, if you can, you get past that, and then you get another couple of months to recruit some of the players to the actual signing day. And then, of course, even after that as well, because some players will wait for NIL deals and things like that to come up. So, which is interesting. I do wonder with NIL, in the NIL world, how much the early signing day in December will be as impactful as February, and even after that, with players trying to find a school that's the best for them to play, the coach they like, and the NIL opportunities too. That's an interesting part of it. We'll take a timeout finally, right? Do we need to? I'm good to go. I'm ready to keep rolling.
Leabo, come on
sure?
in, Leabo. Let's do some fact or fiction. Come on in, Leabo.
Beards,
We're going to take a break because there's still like ads on the stream and stuff that we can play.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
we'll
that's
take
fine.
the break, and then we'll have Leabo on, and we'll do it that way.
All right, great. So if you're listening in your car, you can't hear us right now.
If you're listening in your car, you're not.
Yes.
Or you've got your Bluetooth connected front of your stream.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or they're
absolutely.
They just got their phone in the car, sitting in the seat next to
I
them.
listen on the
because
Bluetooth.
they're not watching while driving like responsible people.
That's right. I listen on the Bluetooth in the car all the time. All the time.
Podcast, the mobile app, you can sync up that way.
That's right. If you guys are listening on the podcast, this affects you none.
If you're listening on the podcast and you're wondering, wow, it seems like they did a really long segment there, and maybe they
Damn
didn't
right
break
we did.
until like 107.
You're damn right.
You're just you're a very efficient listener.
Why is this hour of why is the noon hour
2
63
hours.
minutes?
Yeah, why is it? This is a feature film.
Did he keep the commercials in? It always skips ahead. We'll take a time out. We'll come back.
Jason didn't take a break on time. No.
Was he dreaming? Yes, that is my dream. 4 straight hours, never taking a break. Let's just go, man. Let's just go. It's like Thelma and Louise. We just hold hands and go right over the cliff. More Zone next.
Beards might consider the cliff.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch.
All right, still rolling on this, what is it, a Tuesday today? It's only Tuesday?
What day is it? What time is it? Good afternoon?
Is it Wednesday yet? Is it
Lunchtime?
Thursday? It's Tuesday.
I don't know. I got here in the morning. I don't know. What
A
time
week from Tuesday is Tuesday.
1 week from Tuesday is Tuesday. We haven't had a good, fun Tuesday in a while because it was been all off because of the Thursday night game and all the business
And all
everything.
of the preseason games and training camp and all of that stuff. That,
And now the world knew, so it broke the transmitter.
That's
for a minute.
exactly right. There was
We're
like,
working
well,
on it.
we can't have 5 hours of Leabo today.
No.
Yeah.
No. How do we stop this? What if we knocked it out in the 11 o'clock hour?
Let's get there done. Yeah, it's good.
That's right.
Do you want to curse on the radio? Because you could right now. We're not over the air. It's
He
just
likes to
video
do it.
streams and
That'll
podcasts.
turn it back on.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not stopped him before.
That's a good
just
point.
'cause we'd be terrestrially over the air.
Yeah.
Couple college football nuggets.
Yeah, dude. Let's go.
Not a surprise in that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State have both said, yeah, we're not going to play them once they leave to go to a different conference. Oklahoma's
sad.
like, yeah, we're not going to play them. Oklahoma State, yeah, we're not going to play them.
we weren't going to play you anyway.
And then Lance Leipold being talked about and Bruce Feldman as the top of the Nebraska list for coaches. We talked a lot about Lance Leipold there. I want to talk briefly about Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. The position of college football over the last 10 years has desensitized me to the point that I'm like, oh, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State aren't playing anymore? Oh, okay.
Yeah, fine.
Oh, okay. It's interesting, like, 5 years ago, this would have been like, what are we doing here? 10 years ago, like when Missouri left, and it's like Missouri and KU and
A&M
K-State and A&M left and not
Yes.
going to play Texas. Like, it was like the sky was falling. And now it's a small little blurb on ESPN of that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State will stop their 119 years of playing football every year. It's unbelievable.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no changing the way this has gone. This really, in my lifetime, and I didn't care as much when the Southwest Conference broke up, but this is what it felt like when Arkansas first left. I mean, Arkansas and Texas, that was a big deal. You know, they played. Richard Nixon was there. The president was there when they were 1-2 in 1969. It was this big thing. And then when they're like, we're going to the SEC, you're like, okay, well, I guess Arkansas and Texas. And I know they have since played.
Yeah.
They did it, eventually. But you're just kind of used to this stuff happening. And that was, the Southwest Conference was decades old. And then that formed the Big 12, and the Big 12 made it in its first form for like 15 years.
Yeah.
And now we're like, all right, well, now they're going to last about 10 years. And then they're going to last a little less than that each time. We really only pay attention to the Power 5-ish level of things. But if you want your head to explode, go look year by year at who is in the American Conference or Conference USA or the WAC, the Sun Belt, all this stuff. You go look up the first year of the Sun Belt. I was doing this like last week when we were talking about Sun Belt teams. I don't know, there's like one team, and the Sun Belt's not old. It's not like, from 1935. The first year of the Sun Belt and who's in the Sun Belt now, they're not the same. And I think these middle ones have been hurt even worse. Because it's been really cannibalistic on them, because some of them used to have some decent stuff, Mountain West and all these things, and they're just not what they once were. And we've had, a couple teams leave here and there. But it is sad that they're not going to play Bedlam. And, it's sad that Missouri and Kansas haven't played, but they will. It was nice to have K-State, Missouri play.
Well,
it was cool. Well, it was good to have some interest in a game that was
I agree.
That was something. And Texas and Texas A&M haven't played, and that's going to be a really big deal when they play. And they're still fighting over who's going to be in what pod and who's going to be whatever down there. But that was a big deal. It wasn't a big deal for us as much up here because we didn't care as much about that. But even in the South, the Big 12 South, it was a big thing. It ended up being around Thanksgiving, sometimes Thanksgiving night. That weekend, we used to not have to do shows on the. This is how long ago it was. On the Friday after Thanksgiving, we had the Nebraska network, so we would play Nebraska, Colorado, and we also had rights to Texas A&M and Texas. And one would be at 11, one would be at 2:30, and they would just flip them back and forth. And it was great. No one had to work. And then it was like, well, they all left.
What are you doing? Why do we have to work?
We got some dumb shows we got to do now. So.
And at the same time, like whoever the Chiefs were playing that weekend, I don't know. Who cares? They suck.
Well, they weren't any good. Who cared?
It
just wasn't all that
important. And now you've got, not the rights or anything, but you got Missouri, Arkansas on Friday.
That was Arkansas LSU.
That's a good point.
And that's what it was. And then, eventually, like the Missouri-Kansas game happened, and they pushed that to that Saturday and all that stuff. But those things just they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Nebraska-Colorado wasn't a big deal for 40 years, but it was a really big deal for like 15 years when they were both really good. And that was the time that Josh wasn't alive. You might have been. I don't know. But it was, those were fun games to watch. And, you talked to like Stan Weber or something. Nebraska-Oklahoma was a Thanksgiving thing. And that quit, that's when that quit when the Big 12
right when Nebraska
started, because then it was just you're playing twice every
absolutely.
4 years.
Yeah,
not
you're right.
Every year.
Yeah.
So you kind of had it, and it's the beginning and the end on all these things. But what has continued is Bedlam. You still had Bedlam, and that was cool. And you still had the Sunflower Showdown. That was cool, right? So we still had some of these things. I don't like government getting involved in a lot of things, but I like how they make Iowa and Iowa State play.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't think that's happening in other places.
Wasn't that a big talk, though, back when it was like, is Oklahoma going to go to the Pac-12 and leave Oklahoma State behind? And it was like, well, there's no way that would
they don't care anymore.
There's no way that would happen. The government would get involved. They would mandate that those schools be in the conference. And now it's just like, it doesn't matter. Everybody for themselves. Do you think that the do you think they'll eventually cool on the animosity and maybe one day set up a football game between Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, like eventually Missouri and Kansas did, which people were like, that's never going to happen. KU will never play Mizzou, and I've always said,
it'll take a while.
That's fine. Good for them.
I
get it.
You lost 3 entire classes of college students, though, right? I mean, you lose lose a generation of kids who grew up not knowing that as an active rivalry.
Oh, yeah.
That is still lose a lot in that time.
But I understand it, too, because it's like, Missouri divorced Kansas and then still wanted to sleep together. And it was like Kansas, like, no, no, you don't get to break up with us and then come back over for and be friends with benefits.
No booty call.
That's not what it's going to be. No,
yeah, but it was here's the thing, it was a really good time though, Kansas.
Yeah, it was.
Kansas, I know you also loved it.
It was, but I want all of you or nothing. All right. So I don't know if Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are going to do that.
Happening. What happens is like when Missouri left the league, the people who are in charge of Missouri are not those people anymore.
Yeah.
And the people who are in charge of Kansas at the top aren't those people anymore. Now, Bill Self's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they're playing basketball last year and they're playing this year. So that part's over. And nobody at Missouri is still involved.
I mean,
they've gone through
how many ADs
and presidents of the university.
I mean,
there's like dozens of people.
You've seen head of state?
All of that stuff.
That's good.
All of those people are all gone. So those things will eventually happen at these other places, and they'll get together and they'll probably play a game. But here's the weird part, they're going to get to 12 on the playoff, and then you have more reason to play those games. You're not scared that you'd lose a game. It's going to cost you, right? Because if there's more spots available, there's going to be a 2-loss team in the playoff, and you're like, well, okay, I lost my non-con against my foe. Like, think about like South Carolina. They fight real hard to try to be somebody. They play Clemson every year. Okay, so they got their SEC schedule, and then they play Clemson every year.
You can play the non-conference games because if you win your conference, you're going to the playoffs.
Right. If you win it, you
win a Power 5.
Yeah, you
win a Power 5, you're going to the playoffs.
And if you're in the SEC right now, how powerful it is, you could lose a non-con game and then come in third in the SEC, and you might make a 12-team playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're going to rank that high, I mean, it's just going to be by the rankings.
That's the way they're going to do that. So I think that will give more people, because what they don't want is I think this is a chance to make the regular season better in that way. They don't want to put too many teams in the playoff because that will water down the regular season, because the regular season in college basketball isn't as good as it could be, because there are 64 teams, and you can finish in 8th place in the Big 12, and you can make
and the regular season is ultimately about how do I set myself up for a better run through the tournament? What seed do I get?
Right.
I mean, really, that's what the regular season.
And then we've all seen
that
you can be whatever seed and make a run if you're playing right at the right time.
Right.
In college, I think 12 teams will mean that you will play a better regular season, because you don't have to play the Citadel and Tennessee Tech, and most of these leagues have gone to, you better play one Power 5 now. But not everyone can play Duke or Kansas or Vanderbilt. You have to play somebody. So they're going to, maybe you'll play your rival who you don't want to play. Maybe, Oklahoma State will be the team that Oklahoma plays. That would be great.
Yeah.
And then if you lose that game and you lose to Texas in October and you think, we got 2 losses, we're screwed. No. Maybe you'll get all the way to like November 5th And it's a really big deal when you're playing against Arkansas because you got to stay alive and keep yourself in those rankings. Now you have a whole bunch of people who have a chance to fight to be the 12th best team, whereas to be the second best team or the fourth best team, that's a much smaller group of people. So I think it'll be great when it gets there, if it gets there, and who knows who's going to be in what league when that happens. I don't even know.
I know we got a break. That's what Beard said, but why do we even have to break? Who cares?
I want to know Leabo's hot K in Nebraska.
You said you
had
a hot
it's not a hot take. Here's the deal.
You said that you had a flaming hot take that would get us back on the air.
Is what my thought about Lance Leipold. You mentioned how long he'd spent in Nebraska. Yeah. He's not a Nebraskan. He's from Wisconsin.
He's from
Wisconsin.
But
he spent a long time in Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know when he was at Nebraska? At like Nebraska.
It was it Callahan or was it Solich?
It was Solich.
Oh.
He worked there from 2001 to 2003. And what did they do? The last thing he remembers about Nebraska.
It ran Solich out.
They fired a guy
who played for a national title
a year before or 2 years before. And he went 9-3. That team ended up going 10-3, but he didn't get to coach the bowl game. He knows the insanity that is.
That's true.
So I think that's like, file that away. Is a guy who took that and he said, you know what? I'm not chasing something else. I'm going to go work at Nebraska Omaha for a while, and then I'm going to go take a job at Wisconsin Whitewater, and then you work your way through.
That's a good point.
I don't know Lance Leipold well, okay? I don't know him, but I know this. If he went through that, he may not be clamoring to get back to the place that fired a guy who gave him a chance, who played for a national championship and got fired when he won 9 games.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, in Lawrence, they're trying to get measurements for his butt cheeks to build him a custom golden throne to try to keep him in town. I think that's interesting.
And right now
they are actually. I don't know if you haven't seen that yet, but
they've just played 3 games this year.
3 games.
Let's watch the thing go.
Isn't that amazing? And Bruce Feldman and The Athletic, his sources, there are 3 coaches at the top of the Nebraska list: Lance Leipold, Matt Campbell, and Bill O'Brien.
Well, what's on the top of Lance Leipold's list? That's something.
Duke.
That's right, because that's who they play.
I'm assuming Duke is on
all
the top.
He cares about, one game at a time.
That list. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back and a little fact or fiction with one Todd Leabo next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Go next to Todd Leabo. Go ahead, Todd.
Hey there.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. That was a fun break.
Sports 810 WHB at least.
We sports stream, sports video stream,
sports Twitch,
sports Twitch, sports radio as well.
Sports Twitch is what I get during Red Zone.
We
sports Twitch.
There's a pill for that.
We got into talking about Jesse Plemons in the break and how big he's become in Hollywood
and how big he's become.
That's exactly right. It's all been the same sort of progression for him.
You know, a joke got beaten to death during the break whenever Jason was the one that decided to go ahead and be dainty with it. How big he's gotten in Hollywood.
His star has really
He was like, and he's added some chins to his IMDb. Well, come on, man.
We talked Bo Pelini there in the break. We talked Brian Kelly, Matt House. Like, we covered a lot of ground. Bill Callahan. We covered a lot of ground. A lot of ground.
Hey, Brian Kelly. We covered a lot of ground during that segment.
Family.
My family.
My
family.
Who wants to be part of the Nebraska family?
My family.
We're slowly turning into Frank Underwood now.
We could do that.
Oh my God, no! I don't want to throw.
Nah, let's not do that.
I said, hey, listen,
it's character.
It's just
He's a wonderful character.
Let's also not do that.
Really, what's worse, the actor or the character there?
It's
yes.
Let's not play this game.
The answer is yes to that.
Let's play a different game.
Hey guys, fact or fiction?
Fact or fiction? What's worse, the actor or the character? Fact or fiction?
Actor. His character's fake.
That's right. All right, let's play a little fact or fiction. Leabo goes first, then Beards, then I'll go after.
Beards, can we? I know that I'm springing this on you after an 8-minute commercial break or something. Can this be the week that we try it with music since there's no risk?
Do you want the unique original creation?
I
or do. You want something else?
Very badly. I do. And if we don't like it, there's no commitment.
Is there a unique original?
Yeah, Beards is gonna make something real quick. He's very good in like Ableton, FL Studio, and all that.
You want me to?
He'll just make something a cappella
some
here.
fact or fiction music because I can do that.
No, Beards is. You can see him right back there right now, like conducting an entire orchestra.
Hang on, I just gotta get it. I've got it ready. I just need to put it to where I can use it at the same time as like 5 other things.
Sure, that makes sense. I should have mentioned it during the break. I just
didn't have long enough.
Hit me just now. We were so excited about Bo Pelini.
Can't stop, won't stop talking about Bo Pelini.
Fact or fiction? Josh didn't think this would take this long.
Don't care.
Fact.
It's fact. That one's true. That's just a warm up. That's a warm up shot. That's a freebie.
Okay.
But you hit your warm up half court.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Should I try this next week, maybe?
I don't care.
Beers, we need to try it next week instead.
Why don't we just go and get started and then we'll see what.
Hey! Beers, it sounds great.
This is.
Your creations keep getting better and better.
You're welcome.
This one royalty free?
Yes. This is a good one.
Fact or fiction, folks? Leo Chanel.
This sounds like a game show from the 80s right here, man.
It's just, Beers just knows his audience.
Pig in a poke!
Leo Chanel will take the vast majority of Willie Gay's role over the next 4 games. Fact or fiction?
Fact.
Leo says fact.
Nope, hang on. Nope, we're good now. I didn't hear the question, but I'll say fiction.
I am going to say fiction. Also, zero chance he got pick and a poke, right?
None.
Yeah, zero chance.
That's true, but my answer was fiction.
Yay!
Sorry, Leabo.
All right. Me and Beards won. Leabo with zero.
Good job, Beards. Don't listen.
Don't worry,
Just stop
Leabo.
listening, yeah.
You'll be caught up by the end no matter what.
Yeah,
so I have a feeling we'll all be tied.
Because we believe in Leabo's ability at this game. I get it.
Uh-huh.
Fact or fiction? The Chiefs, even without Willie Gay Jr., will still be 5-0 when they face the Bills following their next 3 games at the Colts, at the Buccaneers, and versus the Raiders. Fact or fiction?
Before they play the Bills, what you say?
Leading up to the Bills. At the Bills game, they'll be 5-0.
Undefeated.
I'll
heading into the Bills game.
go fiction.
I also go fiction.
Well, I'll say fact then.
I should have gone fact.
It's a fact,
I
my
should have
friend.
gone fact. I should have gone fact because Josh said the next loss was going to be like against the Chargers. The next is in the first loss was going to be against the Chargers.
I would say I'm a little less bullish on that today than I was on Sunday Sound Off.
Oh, yeah? Why is that?
But
his suspensions and the Bills.
Yeah, those 2 things. Yeah. Those are really the 2 things. Fact.
Boy, Monday was a real interesting twist for you to
Really
this. You know what? I feel like they're going to lose a game or 2 now based on the Bills alone.
Fact or fiction, the Royals, currently 58-89, have 15 games remaining. Going 4-11 would make them 62-100. They will lose 100 games. Fact or fiction?
Fiction.
Leabo?
How many more Boobich starts are there? No, fiction. Fiction. They're going to find a way to do better than a third, basically.
I'll say fact just for fun.
It's fiction.
It's fiction.
That's fine.
It's got to be
It's going to be close,
It's,
though.
it's not put a lot of money on that fiction,
Here's the thing.
but it's fiction.
They got Ed O back now. They got Ed O back in the outfield. It's all good, brother.
It's all good.
Yeah, once you get Ed O, knocking out home runs and catch a fly ball.
Never seen so much bad baseball in my whole junior life.
Doing everything I can. I'll apologize. Nick Prado had to go and sit down.
Which door, which pitch? What?
I'm just going out here. I'm just going to swing like I would in real life. All right.
Fact or fiction?
Yes.
Bill Snyder is a proficient texter.
Well, it's fact. I mean, according I'll show you text. That's a fact.
That's about what I think it is, I guess, really. So Leabo says it's a fact.
How could something so objective be created?
Well, it's a fact
to
or
be
fiction,
subjective?
Jason.
Beards?
Beards go first. Bill Snyder.
I've heard a lot of those Bill Snyder like K-State post or like shows that we used to run. I'm gonna say that's fiction.
I'm gonna say that's a fact.
It's a fact.
Is that a fact? Yeah, it's a fact.
I got the receipts.
I did too. Eric Bailey on Twitter, who covers OU, same tweet, Leabo?
No, I
his
have
receipts.
Oh, from Bill Snyder.
From Bill
Yeah.
Snyder,
Fair
back
enough.
and forth.
Well,
Yeah.
so Eric Bailey tweeted, Britt Venable says he was texting with Bill Snyder after the Nebraska win. Snyder said, "Great job. You got 3. Now get number 4.
That text was about 5 years late.
Then about 10 minutes later, Snyder sent another text, but not this week. Venable said, "I guess he looked at the schedule." It's a fun story of Bill Snyder out there just firing off the texts.
I went fact because when Shane was leaving and we were doing everything for Shane, Bill Snyder was great and was in constant communication with Corey via text.
Yeah.
Via text.
Right.
So there are a lot of things that are old school about him. The handwritten letter, which he sent to Shane. But he's not one of those to where, don't text me, just call me.
Yeah.
No, I'm texting.
I thought that was fun.
He doesn't want you to snap him.
No, don't snap face.
No.
None of that.
Don't face gram him.
No.
Fact or fiction? The Miami Dolphins will be a playoff team this year.
Thanks, Corey. That would have been a Corey one. That's a fact. They're going to be a playoff team eventually sometime in the
I'll
NFL.
go fact. Season.
I'm going to go fact as well.
I think that's a fact. They look like they're off to a good start here.
Points across the board. That's a fact.
That's a fact.
They got a look of a team that believes in themselves right now.
Well, you come back from that game against the Ravens, you think you're going to come back in any game now. That's going to be a team that's going to be hard to put away because they saw it happen in that game against the Ravens, and now they're going to believe every game they can do it.
Also, did you guys watch the video of Tua with the video being inverted? So look, he was throwing it right-handed.
It looked better?
Totally changed how I looked at Tua. Not
better,
a joke.
doesn't he?
I mean, it is shocking how effective that video is.
Yeah.
Look at the inverted Albert Pujols swing. and it's one of the most beautiful left-handed swings you've ever seen in your life.
Pretty good right-handed.
It's an amazing right-handed one,
Is it
right?
even prettier left-handed?
But it's an optical illusion as to why left-handers have a prettier swing, and they did the inverse, and it looked like he was swinging left-handed. It was like, that is a thing of beauty.
Fact or fiction? You made your son bat left-handed. Fact or fiction?
He's right-handed.
Made your son bat switch him.
He bats left-handed. Couple reasons. One, I do
his homework with him in here. He doesn't write left-handed.
I do like the batting left and throwing.
Are you raising Jason's son?
Because he's right-handed, but I do like the batting left. But when he was a child and he would swing at things on the ground, he would swing left-handed.
Okay, so he got.
So I was like, all right, I'm not gonna force him to swing right-handed.
Listen, if he did well on his sight words, I'm taking credit because we worked hard on sight words that one day in there.
Yeah, they said he actually needs intervention with sight words.
Needs a little help.
So needs a little help with sight words. It's Leabo's fault, not the parents who are around him. I blame the teacher for my kid not being smart, but you're around him more. I don't care. It's the teacher. It's Leabo's fault. I got to work.
Teacher, in fairness, when I studied, I was pretty drunk. What?
Whoops.
You're in first grade. I know. All right, I'll lead off this one.
Fact or fiction? Beards right now down 2. It's 4-4-2 right now. Beards is trailing. K-State is plus 14 against Oklahoma this Saturday. They'll cover. Fact or fiction?
You know, I am going to go fact on that one. I'm not going to touch it and put any money on it, but I'm going to go fact.
I'll avoid this game as well, but I think that is a fiction. I think Oklahoma looks like they've got some legitimate defensive coaches, which is, and they've got some belief about them as well that they did not have last year.
Yeah.
Beards?
I'll go fiction.
It's fiction.
Damn, it's a made-up tale.
So the only reason I went fact is I agree with Leabo on the Oklahoma side. I think Tulane bit K-State because there was we beat Mizzou and we got Oklahoma coming up and gearing up for that one. And they were kind of embarrassed losing to Tulane. I think it's a redemption one. I'm not saying they're going to win.
Redemption.
I wouldn't touch it, but I think they could keep it within 14. They're better than Nebraska.
Just a little PSA. That was the halfway point of fact or fiction.
Cool.
You got
everybody knows.
3-4 minutes to get.
No, I know.
Let's
go.
Yep, I know.
Oh, cool.
That's why I said it.
Leabo's leading.
I entered last weekend with a sizable confidence that the betting markets were underrating the Colts and Vikings, who were both blown out over the last 2 days. Fact or fiction?
Fact.
That sounds like a fact.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
No, that's a fact. I saw it on PBS.
Ouch.
Yeah. Well, listen, I got covered on a big favorite parlay. It didn't involve either of those two teams, so we're okay.
Good for you.
That was not great. A fact or fiction? The AFC West will have exactly 2 playoff teams this season. Fact or fiction?
Fact.
I am going to go. I'm going to go fact with that one.
It's going to be hard for 3 to get in there, so. But I think this is a chance to make a move for me, so I'm going to say fiction.
It's a fact.
Damn it! I got too smart.
Because Miami and Buffalo are going to make it.
Yeah.
And then you've got the 2 other division winners in the
Question
Chiefs.
number 9. Just
Okay,
not a lot of
great.
time left. The Jayhawks are 3-0.
Fact.
That's a fact. They have 3 home games against Duke, Iowa State, TCU
Also
as the
fact.
next 3 up. All true. They'll be undefeated when they head to Oklahoma on October 15th. Fact
Who's
or
up first
fiction?
one in this one?
Me, I think.
Leabo.
No, is it me? I don't know.
Hey, you pointed at Beards last time. No, Jason's up first.
Jason's up first.
I'm going to say fiction.
I think it's fiction. I just can't say they're going to win all those games.
They've been good. It's been fun.
This
but
has been neat, and I believe in what they're doing there, but I'm not going to write them down at 6-0.
Cowards!
It's fact.
It's a fact!
You're so stupid.
We are tied. I don't know how this happened, but I have us tied at 6. Is that right?
One that we will
Sure.
revisit.
Does everybody have that tied at 6?
6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Don't-
1, 2, 3,
if we
4,
would've-
5, 6.
If we would have revisited everything Corey ever said,
Yeah.
all the scores are different.
We are
Tell you
all
what.
tied.
I'll tell you what. Not that this implies anything else ever happening previously, but I have not changed any of my fact or fictions for the sake of the score
No,
here.
but I'm
You
just
guys
talking
just
about
worked it out.
afterwards. He's
no,
just
for
wrong
sure. Oh yeah,
sometimes,
I'll be
yeah.
wrong a lot.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Thanks to former almost entirely sports intern and current KCSN member Tucker D. Franklin for the prompt on this one.
Tucker.
At plus 230 and plus 7, the Mizzou money line is looking a little tasty. Fact or fiction?
That's a fact. Auburn's a disaster.
Looking a little tasty, Beards?
Sure, I'll go fact.
Yeah, I'm going fact. I said it yesterday.
And what hasn't looked tasty to Tucker?
Wow. That's fiction.
What?
No way.
Listen, I'm here to look out for you. Could Mizzou win that game? Absolutely. Should you be betting money on Mizzou football to win outright right now? Absolutely not. I care about you.
But it looks tasty.
I don't think it looks that tasty.
Tasty as those seltzers he drinks on the internet.
It looks like a Tide Pod to me. I don't want to eat it.
I wouldn't put money on it, but if I'm going to put money on it, I would put money on the money line. I don't care about the points. Mizzou's going to win by double digits, or they're going to be embarrassed.
I would just either spend that money on a little tasty burrito or something.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Fact or fiction? After seeing them, oh God,
Colts,
Viking, Kirk Cousins. After seeing them live and re-listening to their album, the new Panic at the Disco album is actually my favorite Panic album since their debut record. Fact or fiction?
Who's up first?
I'll go first, and I'll say fiction.
Fiction.
Listen, I know you enjoyed this concert. I had eyes on you there.
Oh wow,
people watching
Stalker.
you.
Reports back.
So I'm going to say fact.
No, it's fiction. This album still stinks.
Oh, damn it.
You hated it so much that I couldn't imagine.
I did a shot clock review of it. It was bad. It's not for me. It's all right.
Shot clock review.
I'll come back for Panic. Number 12, fact or fiction. I finally bought a new lawnmower. It's been in my living room for like a week. That's all true. The question, fact or fiction, today will be the day I actually finally mow the jungle that is my front yard. Fact or fiction?
Fact.
Jason believes in me.
I'll go fact.
Dude, it's going to be
Beards
colder
believes in
in
me.
a couple of days. That's fiction. Wait till it cools off.
That's a great point.
It's a fact. I'm mowing today.
Maybe a fact.
Beards and Jason are tied.
We won.
Tiebreaker. Who's the best team in the NFC?
Eagles.
By a record?
No. Just who's the best team in the NFC? Now there are 3-2-0 teams. Who's the best record in the NFC? Who's the best team in the NFC?
Bills.
Yeah.
That would have
God,
won.
now I'm blanking on NFC.
Name an NFC for $1, Beards. Name any woman. Name any woman for $1. Name an NFC team for $1.
I'll go Packers, but I don't feel like it.
No, the answer is the Buccaneers, but Jason was closer. Jason gets a win in fact or fiction. The higher on my list. Higher on my list. I had the Eagles over the Packers. So Jason wins.
Based on what? Geography?
He's physically closer to you right now.
About 3
Geography. Philadelphia is closer to Green Bay than Tampa is.
No one heard any of this.
I don't know if that's true either.
The program's next.
Heading.